Hello and welcome to Fresh Face Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me, as always, is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie.
Riddle me this, Joey. What has four legs, three eyes, and is probably going to spend a bunch of this episode slandering Frank Miller?
You.
I was going to say both of us.
Did you say three? Oh, okay. All right. You mean Okay,
Aha!
gotcha. Haha. You have one eye. Haha. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Face Comics. Gotcha. Okay, we're off to a great start. Welcome back. We're very excited for today. We're talking about Batman Zero Year, the next in our Scott Snyder New 52 Batman reading. We're covering both volumes of Zero Year, being Secret City and Dark City, or there is just a complete edition covering all 12 issues of the arc. Before we get into today's episode, as always, thank you all so much for listening. It really does mean a lot. We've seen a lot of growth on the podcast lately, specifically on the YouTube channel, Blood Donut Studios. That's been great. We've had a great response to our bonus episode, which we just released at the time of recording 2 days ago, but when you're listening to this, probably a week ago. But yeah, so we've seen a lot of growth lately. It really does mean a lot. So the best thing you can keep doing at this point is just keep listening to us. Share it around to your friends, whoever you think might be interested in the podcast. Any little bit of support really does help, and it does make a difference, and supports us, helps us to continue do what we do, and gives you more content like this where we're talking about Zero Year, and it's exciting. It's very exciting. Anything else before we get into it?
No, I don't think so.
Cool, nice easy intro. All right. So also for those listening, this does finish off this current Batman block that we're doing. We did Death in the Family, Hush, and now Zero Year. So next episode will be a non-Batman comic. We'll get back into Batman, I think, month 2 months from now. I think
I think in December, yeah.
by
Huh.
December.
By
It's a
December.
little bit sooner than you think. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so yeah, yeah. So next episode will not be a Batman episode. Stick around to the end for the reveal of that, or if you're just here for the non-spoiler section, listen to the non-spoiler section. Skip to the last like 5 minutes or whatever. So yeah,
I have no idea what's coming, and that is a very fun feeling.
indeed. So, all right, let's jump right into this with our non-spoiler section on Zero Year. So, Jacob, this being the second time we've covered Batman's origin, what is Zero Year about?
Not well, okay. It's really interesting. So this this isn't just the origin of Batman. It is also the origin of the New 52 Gotham City. Like, so I don't want to just compare this to Frank Miller for 2 hours,
Mhm.
but where Frank Miller's year one was let's do the origin of Commissioner Gordon. Basically, this one is let's actually examine who Batman is, what it's like to struggle, and let's face him up against a villain who doesn't really get to shine all that much, but here Snyder really uses the villain, and I won't spoil who the big villain is. It's not really a twist, but I think it's one thing that you necessarily may not know going in.
Mhm.
Um, really, really well. Like it is, it's a villain that's hard to write for, but it provides a perfect foil and a perfect just idea for let's examine who Bruce Wayne is, what his mindset would be like, especially just coming back to Gotham. Um, it surprisingly, I know people like to say the Batman was a lot of taken from year one, and there's some influence there, but a lot of it's Zero Year. Like,
Specifically in how. I mean,
how,
honestly, I mean, the final like what 20 minutes, half hour of that film
well, that
is
and how
basically
Bruce Wayne
Zero
is.
Year.
I'd argue how Bruce Wayne is portrayed.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Uh,
definitely,
just
definitely.
as a character, he is um, like we really get to see this vulnerable man. Still, he has
Jacob, you're missing one key fact when talking about the Batman. It's not based on Zero Year. You see, the Batman
Oh,
2022
are we
is
bringing that up? Okay.
in fact a ripoff of Chris Wozniak's pitch for a Batman Riddler comic. You see, it's Batman Gate.
Sure, sure. Don't come at me with that bullshit. It's, it is all, it is, I don't want to say it's all because it's not all. There's a lot of influences on the Batman. But
Yeah,
for the
but if you want to hear us
character
talk
of,
about the Batman, go listen to the Batman episode. There's a whole bonus episode on that.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But like the characterization of Bruce Wayne, I actually really like. And I think it's a characterization that only could have come out of the 21st century. Like, I don't think Snyder could have written this in the 80s, mainly because Snyder takes this really interesting care to examine Bruce Wayne as someone who is essentially mentally ill. Like, he is suffering from basically from PTSD, though
Well,
not
there's
in
that, but there's also the idea that Bruce Wayne comes back and he isn't welcomed by Gotham with open arms because he makes his return to Gotham a secret.
yeah.
And he's very
Well, people
reclusive
think he's
in a lot of ways. I guess if we're talking about like comparisons to like other adapted versions of Batman and earlier versions of Batman that may have inspired this. I think of Keaton's Batman actually, and how he was very reclusive and
oh yeah.
wasn't actually like the public billionaire that most people characterize Bruce Wayne as.
It's a very, I wouldn't call it quite as far as Keaton's because it feels very different from.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying like
But
in how Bruce
the
interacts with
ideas
the
are
rest of
there.
Gotham, like as Bruce Wayne, like he very much tries to keep to himself.
Yeah. I'll also say it also really sets itself apart from the rest of the Snyder run, especially just in the art. Um,
Hmm.
like it's still Greg Capullo, and Greg
Well,
Capullo
it's
is
Greg Capullo, but the inker is different. It was Jonathan Glapion back in those first two arcs that we did, and now it's
yeah,
one Danny Miki,
yeah.
who I mean both are great, but like it does make a marked difference in the artwork. I
It
think.
makes a marked difference. Also, I'd argue the coloring from it's FCO Placencia, who's colored at least everything from Snyder that we've covered so far,
Mhm.
essentially. But the use of inks and colors are very different.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, honestly, like I mean, this story when it was originally collected in trades and how we both have them, um, it was split into two volumes. But I would argue even like the second volume, Dark City, like is two separate stories, and all three of those, like Secret City, Dark City first half, Dark City second half, like they all look very different. I think like
yeah,
they have a very distinct style.
they have a different style, but they're all quite a bit brighter than
Hmm.
in
Well,
tone.
especially that second half of Dark City.
Dark City, yeah, that is supposed to. But everything else just it looks brighter, and I think that helps give the idea that this is younger, this is earlier, like it really makes that feel like a through line,
Hmm.
which I like in particular. Um, like
I'd like to go back to the some of the year one comparisons for a second though, because this story is triple the length of year one. And because of that, because both stories are meant to take place across a year, Zero Year does feel like a year. Like it actually does feel like a
oh
proper
yeah, year
journey
one was
across a
my
year. Whereas like year one, like there is still that effort to be like, okay, well, this is on this date, this date, this date, whatever. But Zero Year takes the time to make it feel like you're seeing how much Bruce is going through across this year.
and how things change, and also like there's just a wider scope. Like Snyder uses a wider scope while Miller was very much focused on mainly Gordon and Bruce. Those are the two people who we get the focus on. Um,
Hmm.
but Snyder is smart and realizes, hey, Gotham is a city. Alfred is a character.
Hmm.
He introduces um, a new character who I was aware of.
Yeah, well,
Wasn't
I thought you knew a fair bit about
I knew a
Ash.
fair bit about him, but I didn't know like his backstory or
Okay.
anything. I didn't know
Yeah.
that he
Well,
was.
here we are, and I know you didn't expect it because you were like, "Is this
Is
character
that?
supposed to be this?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah." So yeah, it's cool to see them here, of course. And we'll get into their exact purpose in the story once we get into spoilers. But I do want to bring up, since we're talking about year one a lot, one of our Twitter questions that we got. You tagged at Sean Franco in one of our tweets today, asking for Twitter questions because Sean missed out on the last episode when we were recording Batman stuff. So he goes, at Sean Franco goes, I appreciate the call up, but I've not actually read this one. So is it worth having Batman stories with so similar titles as Year One and Zero Year? I guess Death of the Family and Death in the Family are a better example, and every damn story that mentions a crisis. What are your thoughts on that, Jacob? Because I mean, I know just talking about comics to people in general, like especially in the Death in and Death of stories, like I mentioned those,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, you mean this is the one where Jason dies. No, that's the one with the face cut off, it's like
Yeah.
it's weird.
Changing an article like the two death stories is a bad decision
Yeah,
because
despite despite the fact that the second of those is definitely the stronger story.
yes, definitely the stronger story, but like the former is more iconic. I would say it doesn't really compare with Year One and Zero Year because I mean, you flip the verbiage instead of 1 year, it's 0 year. And when you read it, that has a very important meaning that is going to stick in your brain long after you read it. You read the arc.
Yeah.
Though maybe not immediately. It takes a while.
Mm-hmm.
It
Sean
definitely
also
takes a
Sean also mentions the multiple crisis stories here, which may not apply to every crisis story, but I know especially when it comes to like Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis, like people mix up those a lot.
yeah.
Um,
I would
it,
imagine
it,
people
it's a continuous
also
problem in comic stories.
yeah, like I get the crisis of it's they're basically spun off from the first Crisis on Infinite Earths, but even
Yeah,
then, before that, there were some crises that were like not as big and not remembered.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, it's a continuous problem in comics, something that still shows up to this day. We still have very similarly titled stories floating
Uh,
around, but it is what it is. It's a weird little caveat of being a comic fan.
it's very weird.
Mhm.
Um,
I'd also like to go to our next Twitter question. I'd like to bring up from our friend Mason, who was actually just on our bonus episode of the Sandman. Mason submitted 3 questions for this episode. So Mason's first question at the GD256 says, one, how many other Batman origins are there in comic form, and how do they compare? It's a bit of a tough question to answer because when we're talking about Batman, like there are so many different versions of the origin. When it comes to just a mainline continuity Batman origin, it's pretty much just this in year one.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'd argue there's that one issue way back in early Double Digit Detective Comics
yeah,
that like
yeah,
flashes back to the Wayne parent killing for the first time. I think that might be Detective Comics like 30 or 31.
one of those, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's realistically, if we're just talking like mainline continuity Batman origins, it's this in year one. Um, I mean, of course, there's like there are like other universe versions of the origin, like in
Yeah.
Earth One and things like that. Um, but like, yeah, like if you're just talking mainline continuity, it's these two, and surprisingly not more than that.
Yeah.
So
I'd argue that at least to compare, I think Zero Year examines its characters better, mainly because it has more time to do that. And has a writer who is less interested on Batman as a phenomenon and more interested in Batman as a person, just as he's shown time and time again. Whereas
mhm.
I'd argue, especially at least early Frank, pre probably pre going crazy Frank Miller is more interested in Batman as an idea,
Mhm.
and not Batman the character.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'd like to move on to Mason's second question here, which is much easier to answer. Two, what is your favorite comic origin story of those that you've read? Um,
I,
so I mean, I guess you have personally haven't read many comic origins, so would you like to take that away?
I mean, specifically for Batman, this one,
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna say it. This might be This is very possibly my favorite thing that we've read for the podcast. Something about
Nice,
it just clicked.
cool,
Um,
very cool.
I don't know why. With
No,
Court of
no.
Owls coming very close in a close second.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Um, it's really hard to pin down just one favorite for me. Um, couple of my favorites. I mean, Superman for All Seasons redoes Superman's origin, and I think that's brilliant. Zero Year is, of course, is a great call out. I like Jeff Johns' Secret Origin for Green Lantern. I think that's a great story. Um, and honestly, despite the fact that I don't like a ton of those early issues, the original Stan Lee Spider-Man origin story,
Really?
done in Amazing Fantasy 15, I think that issue still really holds up, which is a really weird thing to say considering most of those issues are super outdated and don't really hold up that well today. But I think Amazing Fantasy 15 is fantastic. So there's that. Mason's third question is three. How influential was this comic to the Batman canon? It's kind of tough to say considering this wasn't actually the main Batman story at the time. Um, Batman Eternal was the other thing that was going on at the time, and it basically took the place of the main Batman title, despite the fact that the main Batman title was telling Zero Year at the time. But I mean, influential in that it definitely affected the rest of the Snyder run, something that I know, of course, Jacob can't speak on for now,
Yeah.
but it definitely affects the rest of the Snyder run pretty heavily. If we're talking the overall Batman canon, realistically not too much, you know. If we're talking like a Batman origin that is still referenced to this day, Year One is still referenced pretty heavily. It's a big crux of the Batman Catwoman relationship and the Tom King stuff, which is Year One. But overall, I mean, despite it being a great story, I don't think it needs to have a great outreaching effect on the rest of the universe.
No.
But you did mention the villain, who, like I said, we won't spoil that in the non-spoiler section. But the main villain of this has definitely been influenced since by this comic, I think.
Oh well, I imagine. I'm I'm actually kind of surprised that with Rebirth there wasn't an attempt to like reconcile Year One and Zero Year.
Well, they
Um,
don't. I mean, they don't go like all in on saying like, oh, yeah, Year One is still like the version of Batman's origin, but there's a little thing like when it comes to Tom King writing the Bruce Selina relationship that harkens back to some Year One stuff.
I mean, I get that. I totally get that, but I think it's just really interesting to see how Snyder takes it so differently, and again, this 12 issue book has done a lot for at least Batman in film.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
But more
but
on that later. I think I'm going to save our last three Twitter questions for spoilers, which I think we
yes.
should be getting into right about now, right?
Uh, I mean, before we get into spoilers, just a quick. If you haven't purchased this, um, there will be a link down in the description that I highly recommend you go and purchase it because this is a thing that could be your first comic. Honestly,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
it doesn't rely on anything in the past. I thought maybe because this was released at a point where there's a ton of tie-ins for everything.
And there
There,
are a ton of Zero Year tie-ins. You don't need any of them for this particular story,
no,
but I have the collected edition of all the tie-ins, and like some of them are actually really good. So if you wanted to go in and get that as well,
yeah.
there's that.
It
But
also doesn't.
just the story, I
I also
think.
think it's really interesting that it doesn't suffer from Snyder also having to write or co-write, I guess.
Yeah, because that was him and James Tynion doing
Yeah,
Eternal. Yeah.
yeah, which
I, I
was
mean, I mean, this was definitely his baby. Like, despite the fact that Eternal was meant to be like the main driving force behind Batman comics at the time, like Zero Year was Snyder's baby, and
yeah.
it shows. Uh,
I'd also say they probably include it, but the two-book edition includes the script at the back of the first volume
yeah, yeah. For
um for issue
what issue is it?
21,
21. Yeah, which
which
is the
is fascinating. I love it. I read it all. This is also one where I with the Snyder stuff especially, I try to like space it out just a little bit and not read it all. That
But I
I
remember you messaged me the day that you started the second volume, and you just flew right through that.
I was like, right, we're pushing through. This
Yep.
is it. Just it consumes you.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I guess let's find out why. Let's move into
let's find out
spoilers.
why.
I'm very excited. So let's get into Zero Year Secret City. I always mix up the two titles for some reason. Secret City is the first one, or if you're just reading from the complete edition, this is just Batman number 21. Let's get into it.
Let's do
First
it.
off, I gotta say one thing that Zero Year does not have on the rest of the Snyder stuff is the covers aren't the most striking things ever.
Yeah, they're. I mean, I get what they're going for,
And
and
yeah, it's meant to be very simplistic. Yeah.
some of them are great, like the I think it's about the issue 24 cover, 25 maybe. That's used as the Secret City just cover art.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's 24, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's weird. Especially since like this 0 year like motif becomes a cover again and again. Um,
Yeah, they use the same thing a couple times just with a different color scheme. And
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
I wonder if that might have just been because they were doing Batman Eternal at the time and was like, well,
It might have been a bit much. Yeah.
but we open Gotham City 6 years ago.
Once again, I'm pretty sure we've said this on like almost every New 52 episode we've done, where it's like, yeah, the DC continuity is apparently only 6 years long, whatever. You know? Um,
Whatever.
but
Again,
we actually do a flash forward at the beginning of this. This is not currently like where isn't where 0 year begins. This is where 0 year is
yeah,
going.
this is where
And
we're going, and we open with a young child fishing in a subway,
yes.
which is a striking image. Uh, Being then attacked by some goons in mouth masks.
Yeah, they are. One of them is hit on the back of the head. This kid is saved by Batman in just such a great suit. Like we'll talk more about it like when it's actually used later on in the run. But I love this suit so much. Like, oh,
Batman
it's so
riding a
good.
motorcycle
Yeah, he's riding a
with a
motorcycle.
crossbow on his back.
We see this like we said, like Duke Thomas was fishing. Oh my god, just call him Duke Thomas. Well, this is Duke Thomas.
He was the character who was like, is this Duke
Yeah,
Thomas? Is
yep, it's
this
Duke Thomas.
because
Um,
I knew Duke was a character from the Snyder run. I didn't know he showed up in this bit.
yeah. Now you knew 0 year because I think you regularly read Wayne Family Adventures, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and
So
Duke is sort of a major player there, but that's again, it's a slice of life thing. It's not really a ongoing story.
yeah. But yeah, so we see the city is like overgrown here. There's a bunch of like grass growing everywhere. Um, and Batman
I
gives
love
Duke the
I love
fish.
I love the layout of the title page.
Oh yeah, they do this throughout like the whole run. It's so good.
It
But yeah, we get right
feels
into it. 3 months earlier, we meet the Red Hood Gang. So what do you make of the Red Hood Gang as an idea? Because it's very different from how you would typically know the Red Hood.
yeah. Well, I initially thought, oh, so we're playing around with like the Killing Joke flashbacks,
Mhm.
um, which I think is interesting. I love how it's the only thing from Killing Joke that is really there is spoilers for later on. A dude falls into acid, and the leader and like the idea of the Red Hoods switching the mantle. But I love this expansion of it to like a whole gang.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's also just it's really interesting because we start with basically, you know,
Oh, I mean, we're thrown right into the action. Like we see, this is Bruce here. He has like half a mask ripped off. The Red Hood gang is going after him. Like we don't even know what led up to this situation. We're just thrown right into it. Bruce is here. He's wearing a mask. He's talking to Alfred over this sort of intercom thing, and the Red Hood gang's ready to take him out. And they have like these hostages here. It's a very just like striking scene to throw you into.
yeah, it's this great idea of him trying to do math to like save these people by driving a truck into the Gotham harbor slash river. I think it's the harbor. Um, and he ends up, you know, giving the middle finger to the Red Hood leader.
Yeah.
Um, and we lead into a very interesting title of "What do you love about the city, Bruce?"
Mhm.
Um, which I think works just so well as a subtitle.
Mhm.
Um,
And then first off, I just want to say once again, I feel like I have to bring this up every time we cover a book drawn by Greg Capullo, but I love Greg Capullo's art so fucking much.
it
And just like
is
seeing it again here, like it's so great. Um I wanted to mention it especially because I love this next page here where everything's upside down and you see that like Bruce is like hanging from the ceiling. Just a really cool way to like play around with perspective, and Capullo totally sells it.
Yeah. Also, I love the idea of Bruce going out wearing masks of like other faces. Um,
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, because he hasn't developed any sort of other identity yet.
yeah, which is really interesting. Also, it's very heavily implied that he is not at Wayne Manor.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
like,
it's sort of like do you remember the Batcave from The Dark Knight?
yeah,
It reminds me of that. Like it's just this sort of like underground high tech, not even high tech, just very simple techie base. That's a
techie base. He's not Batman yet. And he
mhm.
won't be Batman for a couple of issues.
Yeah.
Um, which I think works really well.
Hmm.
It doesn't like tease you at all. I suppose using technology might be considered a tease, but like we're trying to build up to this idea of who's Batman gonna become.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Bruce leaves this sort of like pseudo bat cave with Alfred. He goes out into the city and meets is met by Uncle Philip immediately.
Yes.
Um, Now it's important to note here that like nobody really knows that like Bruce is back yet. Um, and Uncle Philip sees him and sort of like, it just like immediately like sort of like jumps on him. I just like the
Yeah.
little touch here of Bruce wearing the hat with the R on it.
With an R, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, there are a lot of little Easter eggs like that I think
Yeah, yeah,
really
and,
work.
and like they're consistently there, but they don't like shove themselves in your face.
No, they don't. But they're subtle. But Philip is also just an interesting character because he's like, yeah, you're back. You should come by the office and take over.
Hmm.
Um, and Bruce is having none of it. It's like, no, I want to be dead. I
Hmm.
want still to be presumed dead.
Yeah.
Which
We get a nice little flashback here. Then, once he tells Uncle Philip what he wants, we see Thomas here, um, with the same like sort of R hat that and he gives one to, or no, Bruce already has one on. I don't know, I just like the little touch, and it's a nice little flashback sequence. It's cool.
it's this nice innocent flashback.
Hmm.
It's let's play this innocent, and it's this building up this first idea of like he snuck into the city after school, um, and Bruce Wayne always sneaking off as a little kid, which I really like the idea of Bruce being allowed to be an actual kid.
Hmm.
Um,
It also just makes more sense for Bruce to be more adventurous even before his parents die. You know,
yeah,
there should be that spark of adventure there before tragedy strikes him. You know.
yes,
Yeah. So Bruce goes back to Wayne Manor. He still has all those like different face masks and disguises with him.
in a briefcase, which is a creepy image. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, right. Um, but yeah, so we go over to this tower here, which I like a little touch of like it having those sort of like two sort of spikes on top that look like bat ears almost.
yeah, and we have Philip Kane talking to someone mysterious. Asking. It's you know, basically saying, uh, you have to answer all your problems.
Hmm.
We build up to the reveal that it is Edward Nygma,
Yeah.
the
Now I
Riddler.
think you knew that it was Riddler already as the main villain of this, right?
I did.
Okay.
Um,
Um, I mean, it's still a great reveal no matter what. I don't think they were hiding from that on release,
no.
but yeah. So now that we're here, I do want to like mention at least one of our Twitter questions about the Riddler because we got a few of them. Um, let's go to Jamie's first. Actually, Jamie at Jamie underscore season 7 says my favorite take on Riddler. How much? Oh, hang on. How much better is it than year one? So we have two there actually.
Yes.
So he says his favorite take on Riddler. Thoughts on that?
Um. See, this and Hush are maybe neck and neck for the characterization of the character.
Yeah, Hush.
Um,
I think Hush still tops it for me just a little bit. But honestly, like I don't think we've read a bad Riddler appearance
no,
between this, Hush, and Long Halloween, and Dark Victory for that matter, of course. Like I don't think there have been any bad Riddler depictions that we've covered so
no.
far.
I think Riddler, for what he does here as a character, works. Um, Especially since one, we're setting up still. This is the New 52. It's its own universe. Some things can be different,
Hmm.
but this is something we are going to examine who the Riddler is, and like he has a plan. Like
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
also,
Um,
I like the redesign from his earlier minor appearance in Court of Owls.
yeah, it's nice that that's not there.
I also I think you've mentioned this before, but do they ever bring back that appearance? Please say no.
I
Please
don't
say
think
no.
so. I can't remember it being used anywhere else. But yeah,
Because
so
oh, I mean it's made
yeah,
fun of in the Harley Quinn show, but
it is. It is. Yeah, but yeah, so actually I mean, we've already really answered Jamie's second thing. How much better is it than year one? If we haven't made it already apparent, very.
very.
Um
And again, year one isn't bad.
yeah, oh yeah, year one's not a bad story. It's just it's come on. Like you're comparing Frank Miller to Scott Snyder, which I
Yeah,
guess to people that don't know Scott Snyder, Frank Miller is the answer, but no, it's Scott Snyder. Like
Scott Snyder. Also, I imagine with time we might get more of this one being at least revered as much as year one is.
oh, I think anyone that's read both stories knows that 0 years better,
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
but I mean,
but
hey,
yeah.
who knows? But yeah, so we end the issue here, N21 on Edward telling Philip that he has to kill your nephew Bruce Wayne. And we got this nice little flashback here of Bruce finding the hole that leads down into what will become the Batcave. We can
Cave and the
assume.
cave
So
systems.
yeah.
Um,
And we went to Batman 22 here. Really cool cover here. I like the sort of like cast iron bat symbol thing going on
yeah.
there. Once again,
Uh,
another great title page for 0 Year Secret City Part 2. And we
um,
and we open on another very just high action sequence. Red Hood Gang once again. The, fucking Gotham and Zeppelins. I don't know what it is,
well,
but
I
just
think part of this is intentional because this is Scott Snyder tributing all the Batman stories of his youth
yeah.
in a lot of ways.
And there are year one tributes and Dark Knight Returns tributes actually. So it's
And
not
Dark
like
Knight Returns
it's not like Frank
tributes.
Miller has absolutely no influence on. You
Influence.
know. Um,
Just, the good bits. Um,
but yeah, Gotham has Zeppelins, of course, and the Red Hood Gang have invaded one of them.
yeah, it is.
And they're here speaking to one Oswald Cobblepot, which I think is a nice little appearance there.
Yeah.
He doesn't get much
Oddly
time in
enough that we
this.
have so many just penguin cameos in the Batman books we cover.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. We don't really have like proper penguin stories, maybe outside of like Death of the Family. That's about
yeah.
it. Um,
And that was just pretty much a backup story,
the
basically.
backup story, and he has that well, the two backup stories
Yeah.
he plays a pretty significant role in. But yeah.
But not as like a foe for Batman, which is interesting. Also, I love sort of the Danny DeVito-esque design almost.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah. Um, you also really see Red Hood 1 as this just madman. Like,
hmm And
spoiler
that,
alert,
and yeah, let's
he's
just say like it's the Joker.
it's
Like,
the Joker.
I know I said this to you already, which it's not a spoiler because you know what the next, at least with the next how the Batman next Scott Snyder arc pertains to this. But like
Yeah.
the idea is that Joker appears in some capacity in every Scott Snyder arc, that he is this constant presence throughout Bruce's life, whether he's a big part of it or a small part.
Yeah.
Um, so I like that here, that like he appears no matter what, and he's here as Red Hood One. I love Red Hood One's characterization, and once again, we talked about this way back in the Killing Joke episode, but like you know, it's the acid doesn't turn him insane. There's got to be something wrong with this guy before he falls into a vat of acid.
I mean,
You
he's fucked. He's black. He's a fucked up man who's been blackmailing like so many people in Gotham into doing
know?
horrible stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we mentioned this in Killing Joke because in Killing Joke it's a lot more subtle than this, but like here, like it's just outright like, yeah, this guy is like already a horrible criminal before he becomes the Joker.
I mean,
Um,
he has his helmet wired to shock people.
yeah. But yeah, so we see Bruce Wayne is once again disguised here with one of his face masks. I just like that he has so many of these.
Well,
um,
it's also kind of interesting. I don't know if it's an intentional parallel, but considering the way the Snyder Run is collected, um, a lot of people who are reading this in trades will have been reading this right after Death of the Family, which has a lot
Yeah.
to do with Faces.
Yep.
Um,
Definitely.
like, because I mean, I know there's what 3 issues in between.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 18, 19, and 20, which is all one arc actually in Graveyard Shift. But
Yeah, which
yeah. By the way, for those listening, we won't be covering Graveyard Shift on the podcast. It's too disparate of an anthology that we would need to cover a lot of other things in order to keep going with the Scott Snyder stuff. So we'll just be doing it in game
I will be reading it
next.
though.
Yeah, Jacob will still be reading it, but we won't be covering Graveyard Shift as its own episode.
Yeah,
We'll probably talk.
I
We'll probably
might,
talk about it briefly whenever we do
yeah,
Endgame, though. So
yeah, I might mention it just a little bit, but
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so Bruce takes on the Red Hood gang here. He uses the sort of like magnetic shoe thing to cling to the bottom of the Zeppelin.
Which I love some of this imagery.
Oh yeah.
I also love the way he uses like the spikes. He steals DNA,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he is trying to basically to save the Penguin and stop this gang.
Mm-hmm. He goes
Uh,
in, tries to save the Penguin. Meanwhile, we get another flashback. We pretty much continue on from the last set of flashbacks where he falls down the well,
into darkness,
finds the cave system, and
is
I love the way Capullo draws this.
attacked by bats. Um, an image that I think the only time we've ever really seen this was also in Dark Knight Returns. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if memory serves.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's not done terribly often, but it's been used a lot in adapted media, which I find
yes.
interesting. Which, by the way, the best of which is easily the opening of Batman v Superman. Do
Um,
you remember that at all, or
I do. I'm trying to think if I like that or Batman Begins, the way Batman Begins plays it.
I don't know. I like the idea that Bruce has this fictionalized version of it in his head, and he knows that he's lying to himself about how fantastical this situation actually is. Um, I don't know. I always
Maybe.
like that. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so we go into Bruce testing out more sort of technology and and gadgets. We had a great little scene between him and Alfred here, um, culminating in an argument where we basically get the Batman slapping Robin meme, but with Alfred and Bruce.
Yes, but I like this conversation because it's a continuation of Snyder's just overall theme through all of his books for at least for Batman that we've read of what is Gotham, um, centering the city itself. Like it starts with this great sort of monologue from Bruce. Um, Cobblepot was a dead end. The DNA I got off the Red Hood leader isn't on record anywhere, and now he's taking over rival gangs. Well, before he only took in non-criminals. It's like he expands the gang to prove he can. A bomb goes off at a school for the deaf. Someone is shot for no reason walking in the park. There's no pattern except to make the city afraid of itself. Um, and I think that's really important, just for what Snyder's view is on Gotham City itself.
Hmm.
Um, because the whole idea is bringing as much to the forefront, probably more than any Batman writer to come before, that Bruce makes the city better, both as Bruce Wayne and as Batman. Um, Also, just the characterization is all for Robert Pattinson is all like this Bruce Wayne.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
he does
I
not want
mean,
to
this
be
scene
out in
alone, like how
public.
detached Bruce is trying to be here when talking about the case, but the moment Alfred brings up his father, Bruce gets very emotional and overreacts. So
Also,
yeah, definitely, I like that.
I would have loved to see in the Batman a recreation of the Batman Robin meme with
Yes, yeah, and especially with Andy Serkis and Robert
yeah.
Pattinson. Like, yeah. But also I like the little gag at the end there. I mean, I call it a gag. It's a sad moment, but Alfred's like walking away and Bruce says come back and he like attaches the hook. He's like I was talking to the hook and like
Ugh.
Alfred looks really sad.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah.
Because I like how Snyder makes Bruce kind of an asshole.
And
Um,
then Bruce after Alfred leaves, like Bruce like rips down the wall and smashes it. Just a great little moment.
and then
But
he calls Uncle Philip Kane.
mhm.
Okay, so this is also the father of Kate Kane, Batwoman, right? Right?
No.
No?
Related to them.
Okay.
No, I think that's a different character. Let me I just want to make sure I'm not wrong about this because I think it's a different Kane.
There are too many Kanes.
There are. Um Jacob Kane is Batwoman's
Okay,
father.
so a
Sorry.
different Kane though.
But still related because remember that Batwoman is Bruce's cousin. So
Right, right. But yeah, they need to talk, so they go to a museum
yeah, and
where
this is just the worst fucking scene. I hate this. I mean, like it's great, but man, I fucking hate Philip. He's such a bitch.
oh
Like,
he is a smarmy asshole. One, I love how the first panel in the museum is Bruce being eaten by a dinosaur,
yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Also, you see just a lot of things like, ooh, the bat things that'll either influence or be in the Bat Cave earlier. Like you had the giant penny outside of Wayne Enterprises.
mhm,
Um, you have, just dinosaur skeletons. They're not animatronic, but it's still imagery.
yeah.
Um,
But
and
yeah,
I love how it's like Bruce wants to talk business of like, hey, you're giving these criminals sonic weapons. You're giving them like actual like dangerous things, and you're making the city worse.
mhm,
It's like, we'll put a stop to that. Don't worry, because we just have to celebrate that you're home and
mhm.
alive and back. Um, because yeah, that's where this scene goes.
Because Philip holds a surprise welcome back party for Bruce and turns on all the lights and all these people are there. We see Vicky Vale here, which I really like. It's just it's awful. I hate this. And like like you could see within the crowd, like some people are even like kind of uncomfortable because they could tell that this was sprung on Bruce and it's something that he doesn't want.
Also,
So
they're either uncomfortable or super fucking smug.
oh yeah, yeah. Just
Like,
awful, awful,
um,
awful, awful. But yeah, Bruce runs away, um, gets out of there, goes into like another area of the museum,
where there's
and
like Egyptian artifacts.
and he meets Edward Nygma, and we have the coolest fucking page in this issue, where we sort of like go in on this like it's sort of like Egyptian puzzle,
Yeah, this
and like
well,
spiral
it's a game board of an old ancient Egyptian game that will be
and.
very relevant later.
And we
Um,
spiral in on this snake as the dialogue and the panels keep going, and it's such a cool page.
yeah, um, and we start with a riddle. Um, if you're looking for the exit, it's up ahead through the aviary wing. And then it circles around, and Bruce just gets more and more frustrated. Like he's not able to necessarily figure out the riddle.
Hmm.
Um, and they basically are playing this game. And it ends with no more room, Mr. Wayne, or at least no more room for to ourselves. See, as
Oh, so
other people
good.
come,
Yep. So Bruce does escape then. Um,
climbs up on a sphinx and climbs out the skylight.
yep.
Um,
Meanwhile, outside, the Red Hood gang is here. Um, and Bruce sort of walks into the other building, which has another area, another room like decorated to say like "Welcome home, Bruce." As he walks inside there, and the Red Hood gang blows up that building, and that's where the issue ends. And it's so cool. Like, oh, I love it. I
it
love it. I love it.
is, yeah. Well, also flashing back to the scene in the well
Yeah,
with the
and with
bats.
yep, and they make this sort of like bat symbol behind him. Like, oh, so cool, so cool.
Um, and
Move on to Batman 23 then. Not the most exciting cover.
I like it. I like that we're getting glimpses of Batman
Yeah.
up until we get a full reveal.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's the most interesting because it's his arm. That's it.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's nice, but like just it's fine.
it's fine. I mean, it's still Greg Capullo, so.
Yeah.
Um, but we open with a quick flashback to Thomas Wayne yelling down the well,
Mhm.
trying to
And
find him.
we go to present day then. Bruce is trying to escape the building. He's met by the Red Hood gang, of course. Who they
They
try.
pull they pull him up, um, and it's really like they then start beating on him with old weapons, and it gets kind of intense.
Oh, it does. Oh my God, yeah.
Um,
Bruce gets fucked up here. Yeah, they just mess him up afterwards. Like you see him, he's all bloodied and bruised. Um, they take down this portrait of it. It is, yeah, it's Thomas and Martha there. They take down this portrait of them. Um, Red Hood one
and,
sort of like almost shoves it in Bruce's face and takes it away. Um, and
and just it just gives this monologue about how like they only made the city worse,
mhm,
and inspired him to basically and he's like to go insane and start doing these things. He shoots the painting um like through Thomas.
one bullet through each of the Wayne's faces. Um, and just sort of leaves Bruce there. He's dragging himself through the burning building. He tries to get himself out of there. He gets another he takes like a secret elevator down there, and another very Batman Begins type scene with the fire coming down the elevator shaft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, all paralleled with Bruce being saved from the well as a child.
Mhm.
um but he gets out, and finds his way back to Wayne Manor in front of a very large window, and he collapses.
Mhm.
We'll put a pin in that for now because, well, we all know what's coming, hopefully, if you've been following this podcast since pretty much the beginning. Um, but meanwhile, back at Wayne Tower, Philip Kane is pissed. Um, and Enigma's just like, well, it needed to happen. He needed to die. Um, and can I say, I was imagining John Glover's portrayal of the Riddler through all of this.
I could see that. I
Yeah.
think for me, any Riddler voice in my head is the guy from the Arkham games. Like, I don't know what it is. I love John Glover, of course, and I love a lot of the Riddler voices out there. But Arkham Riddler is like still the ideal Riddler voice in my head.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
Mhm.
That's fair.
I know you just haven't experienced as much of him
I
as
haven't
I
experienced as
have.
much. I mean, it's a great performance. It's just I also have just John Glover in my head.
Yeah, that's
As long
fair.
as it's not Jim Carrey.
Yeah, yeah. There's that.
Um,
So,
but yeah, also like a window gets shot out, and there's just this long back and forth about all of the safe codes. Philip thinks he has um, like Enigma cornered. It's like, always so many steps ahead. He went ahead of everyone, Edward A. Sitting up here in your little web. Well, what do you have to say about this outcome, huh? Just one thing. And he triggers
he says
like
Kane. Which is the password. Sort of like trigger this trap. Um, he um he like gets Philip down on the ground, um, and then leaves him in there. Does this kill him, right? Or,
I'm not sure. It might.
hmm,
Um he's definitely out of the story for the rest of the story.
yeah. I would imagine
Um
it. Yeah, I'd imagine it kills him. Anyway, but yeah, so we go back to Alfred trying to fix Bruce up. My God, like just Capullo draws Bruce so messed up here. Just how like
yeah.
swollen everything is on his face. Ugh, it's bad. But yeah, so they have this nice little conversation. Alfred stitches him up, um, tells him to take it easy, and of course he's Bruce Wayne, so he won't.
He
Um,
won't.
Later that
Uh
night, then Bruce comes downstairs in front of that large window again,
in
and
front of the bust of his father.
yep,
He's
it's. I mean, what else is gonna happen here? You know.
he has a
Um,
monologue about failing, basically praying to his father. The first entire page of this is done just through art, which I love.
mhm.
Um, and it's like, show me. And interestingly, he is shown the cave system through what I think is supposed to be like a hologram or something that he already had. Um, but it's just this great image of mixing across 2 pages of mixing like the stately Wayne Manor and what will be the Batcave. into one
Uh,
image.
Yeah, Bruce opens the window then these bats fly in. He goes he says yes I see. Like I said, bats fly in, then he sits back down in the chair and you get the line, of course, yes father, I shall become a bat. And like it's it's Frank Miller, and we talk so much about how this book isn't Frank Miller, but it's probably the best thing from year one, so may as well.
So we may as well. Also, there's also a very Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo twist on it. Like,
Mhm.
this is not how Frank Miller would have drawn it. It isn't
Mm-mm.
how David Mazzucchelli drew it.
Mhm.
Um, Also, there's the interesting symbolism of the holographic globe shattering,
Yeah.
which is a very interesting. It's basically this is the creation of Batman.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Oh, it's so good. Like we actually like you see Bruce coming to the realization of like what the mantle should be and what this other identity should be. So which perfectly leads us into issue 24, which is where we get the cover of Secret City, the trade that is. And keep in mind also like that scene, the Yes Father I Shall Become a Bat scene, if we're comparing it to year one, was the end of issue one of year one.
yes.
This here it took us 3 issues to get to this point, and I think it's so much more well deserved here.
It feels actually built up. Um, like, yeah, in year one, you saw Bruce struggling against basically that sort of pimp and his gang. Um, but especially where we want to focus in on Bruce, a lot of issue one of year one, especially, is setting up Gordon as a character.
Mhm.
Gordon moving back to Gotham, paralleling them. For
Yeah.
this one, Gordon doesn't show up for a while,
Mhm. Oh
um,
yeah, yeah,
which I think is great just because of where the perspective is.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. Like we're just focusing on Bruce here.
yeah,
Um, and I think it's really smart, especially because like when you're trying to build up to those big moments, like Yes, Father, I shall become a bat. Like that's big. It's a big moment, and it's very deserved here because it's all been done through Bruce's perspective, and you see how he got to that point. But yeah. So anyway, we kicked off issue 4. Bruce gets a haircut.
the first time we really see Bruce Wayne smiling too in
Yeah,
this comic.
yeah.
Um,
We then go over to the Red Hood gang pulling off another job within the city, in front of this billboard that says "Welcome to Gotham, greatest city in all the country, or greatest city in the country." I can speak. They're pulling off this job. This
I
guy,
think
like,
it's also meant to be a political ad for like yeah, it's like a campaign for mayor.
well, yeah,
Um,
Sebastian Haiti. So,
yes,
so yeah. But yeah, so this guy like sort of like he's like doing his own job as like his whole crew disappears behind him, and he looks up behind him, and all his crew is strung up in front of what would say Gotham greatest city in the, and it makes a bat symbol, so it just says welcome to bat symbol country.
yes.
And it's
Uh,
so good.
and then we get
um
our first look at Batman.
yeah, he goes after this guy. First off, we get an in-universe reason for the Detective Comics 27 cover. Like, I love that. I think that's so
Yeah,
cool.
and
Batman
it's
swinging by, he has the thug in his arm, he's grappling. And this is where we get our first look at the Zero Year suit, and I fucking love it. It's the Detective 27 suit, and I love it.
just modernized. I love that they include the purple gloves.
There are the purple gloves, the super ridiculously long ears, the very small bat symbol, which brings us to when our next Twitter question, I think, comes from Cav Gill 2001 at the underscore Brit underscore geek, says, in my opinion, this contains both the best Batmobile and best bat suit designs. How would Capullo's designs stack up amongst your favorites,
I
Jacob?
mean, there's some of my favorites. I love the way Capullo just draws the universe in general.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I mean
like
of the comics we've covered, like my favorite bat suit is honestly probably this one.
yeah.
um
I love how techy like all of the bat suits look in Capullo's run. Um, I think this one actually definitely outstrips the year one suit. Like I know the year one suit is meant to be primitive, but also it's just drawn in that scratchy style, so it doesn't really show off as much as it could. Because that's what Mazzucchelli's going for with his style.
mhm,
Whereas this one's just opulent. It is fun to look at.
yeah.
And just the first time you see it, we have this major shift. in
And
where
the colors really complement it. Like I've never seen a version of a bright gold utility belt complement the entire suit as well as it does here.
yeah. Um,
It's
and
so good.
they include that, and it's not afraid to be what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
I don't know necessarily about the Batmobile though. That's always a hard decision because there's
Yeah,
it's one of
yeah.
those things that there's a lot of ways you can do the Batmobile and make
Mhm.
it work. A
Yeah,
lot of ways to
I
fuck it
agree.
up too,
Mhm.
but um, just a lot of ways to do it. Um, but yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, moving on, Red Hood one is pissed, like super pissed. We get our title of sort of the issue. What do you want with this city, Batman? Um, and he's the Joker by this point.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a very Joker like monologue that we open on here.
Yeah, he calls, he dumps what he calls liquid courage into someone's mouth, and what it is concrete that
That be
quickly
that becomes
quickly
like
hardens.
solid. Yeah, solid in your mouth. Like, ugh, love it. But yeah, so he kills this guy. Um,
Mainly because,
meanwhile,
Batman is beating him. Uh
mhm.
and
Oh no, okay, so we do see Philip again.
yes.
Okay, there we go. Um, but yeah, I also like because like right now the public does think that Bruce is dead again, right?
Is dead. He is dead.
Yeah,
He is dead.
yeah,
Um
like, he died in that explosion. Like I don't know. Like, how do you feel about the idea that like they bring Bruce back, they make this whole deal about Philip outing him existing again, and then like they make the public think that he's dead again right after that.
I think it's a very smart way of being like, "Oh, so Bruce can't be Batman.
Hmm.
He was dead at the time." Sure, he wasn't actually dead, but like the world thought he was dead. No one would try to make that connection.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like also, what sane person would survive an explosion then decide let's dress up as a bat and
Hmm.
start to take down criminals in Gotham City? Like, but yeah, he sees all the targets, from above. Alfred's the one that tips him off to go to what I'm guessing is basically Wayne Tower. I think it's supposed to be Wayne Tower.
Yeah, and he meets up with Philip here. Philip apologizes for what he's done to
Is
Bruce.
genuinely sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
still a bastard, but is
Oh
genuinely
yeah, I mean, like he's only apologizing because he got fucked over by Edward. Like that's it. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also even worse because then he reveals he has RH347 tattooed onto his chest. He is forced to be a Red Hood gang member, um, which is again striking imagery, very Joker-esque.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and he shows Bruce, here's the Red Hood mask and a gun, uh, and like access to the system.
Mhm.
Um, Bruce offers to let him stay at the manor, um, which he declines. Um, uh,
Yeah.
and there's just this great idea that it was, um, that it was, that Philip thinks, oh, Alfred's the one who got you out of your cave and entering the world. It's like, no, that wasn't it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we immediately cut to the Bat Cave.
The actual Batcave, and Bruce is Bruce is here, like in the suit without the mask on. It just looks nice. Like it's an appealing suit, no matter like what shape it's in. It's cool.
We don't have the Bat computer yet, but we have several laptops.
Yeah,
We
we're
have
on our
Alfred
way.
coming down a rope ladder. It's like, the rungs are slippery. So long as you don't install a fire pole, I'll manage, sir.
Very fun. Like despite how like just how good this story is and like how seriously Snyder is taking it, like there are just some really fun homages to
And
a lot
they're
of
nice
famous.
jokes. Like,
Oh yeah,
you can
yeah.
do a very serious story and still tell a joke.
Mhm.
You just, can't make your story feel like you're breaking the fourth wall and making fun of it. You're
Yeah,
just telling a joke.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, they are, going to create an entrance in the study. So, we have the classic grandfather clock entrance.
Yep.
And Bruce is working out, what the Red Hood gang really wants.
Mhm.
Where are they attacking? And uh, they originally think, oh, we'll have Batman do this one. It's like, I think this is a job for someone else.
Yeah, and so
Prompting Bruce Wayne's return officially
yeah,
again.
again. We also get a nice little scene here with Commissioner Loeb, which I like the way that Capullo draws Loeb. It's cool.
Yes,
Yeah,
still always eating a Pez.
yeah.
Um,
It's a nice little touch.
yeah. Um, the first idea is, oh, is Harvey Dent doing stuff? Which just a brief mention, but I love it because it's like, yeah, Harvey would still be trying to clean up the city.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, no, just a cool little idea. I like the little like drawings of the like Batman up there on the cork board. We also get just a very small appearance, but it's nice to have there. Gordon, he won't really start to play a role until the next book,
yeah. Well,
but
they're sending Gordon down to Ace Chemicals because
mhm.
that's where Bruce is at this
Yep.
point.
And he's doing his little like official welcome me back speech right in front of Ace Chemicals there. Some really great dialogue here for Bruce, which I like when I like that this version of a public persona, Bruce Wayne, isn't drawn as like it isn't like written as a complete idiot, so as to like throw off everybody.
No, he's very smart, very calculating because
And it's
he's
very in line with the way that Snyder writes Bruce Wayne otherwise, because right from Court of Owls, like Snyder is writing Bruce as a proactive force in Gotham.
yeah, and you see that with his returns. Like he immediately asks, "What do you love about Gotham City?" No, I mean it. You out there, everyone looking at this broadcast, what do you love about the city? I mean, it's an awful place to live, right? I mean, it's terrible. It's unaffordable, dangerous, and full of rain. It's a monster. So why? Why do you love it? Um, and the monologue continues, and it's a beautiful monologue that I think
It's
you
a nice
should.
little play out sort of on the Gotham is thing
Well,
from
yeah,
what yeah.
that's the point of this run in my mind.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. Gotham is, and like I mean, not to spoil anything, but like that does come back around the whole Gotham is idea by the end of the run.
which I think it's just important. And
Yeah.
I'm glad Snyder got like 52 issues to do a full run. And
Oh yeah, yeah. It's great.
yeah,
But yeah. So I mean, not, of course, not all those issues are relevant to the run, but
occasionally there are, crossovers with the 52-week massive series that's going on right now.
yep.
Um,
Again, one of the many reasons we're not covering Graveyard Shift. So anyway, but yeah, so we move on here. Everyone starts to arrive at Ace Chemicals. Gordon gets there, and we go inside. Bruce is there once again, just still as Bruce. He's not suited up as Batman yet. The Red Hood gang begins to attack. And
we basically get let's do the flashbacks of the Killing Joke.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Ace
and
Chemicals
I
is
love the
attacked.
twist on it.
Yeah, yeah. They send like sort of like these missiles down. The Red Hood gang is here. Alfred is working behind the scenes, keeping Bruce updated on what the news is covering. It's just
uh,
nice. Like it's a very like fast paced scene. Also,
Bruce.
I like to think that this page here, where like once the action starts to calm down a bit, this next page here, when Bruce is all silhouetted and he walks inside Ace Chemicals, it kind of looks like the ending of the first issue of Death of the Family
Ooh, yeah.
when he goes to see Harley dressed as Red Hood there. It looks a lot like that, I think.
Interesting parallel. Yeah. Um, but yeah, the power goes down. A bat symbol lights up the city itself.
Mm,
Um, and again, it's a very calculated move of we need to make sure Bruce and Batman are in the same place at the same time.
mm,
And they're pulling off the trick wonderfully.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, because Batman eventually does show up.
Yeah, Batman arrives here. I love the way Capullo draws this silhouetted Batman here when he first attacks the Red Hood gang. Looks
Yeah,
so cool.
um, and we either do things in very much extreme light or no light.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but the bat, the bat attacks.
Hmm.
Um,
And like I love that also a lot of Batman's dialogue here is almost an homage to some older Batman comics. Some of the cornier Batman dialogue that's sort of referenced here, like literally at one point Batman like rides a Red Hood down a staircase and says "Yeehaw." Like I love that.
I
Like it's so
it
great.
works. It
Yeah.
works. It's taking itself so it's not like belittling itself. It's not ashamed to be doing those dumb things.
And
Uh,
also just shows that Bruce hasn't fully developed the Batman persona yet.
he hasn't. He's working out who
Yeah.
Batman's gonna be
Right now,
throughout this.
right now, all he is he's just a comic book superhero, and he's like, oh, here's how these guys talk, you know. It's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he takes out most of the Red Hood gang, is sort of comes face to face with Red Hood one then.
There's an
Uh,
explosion, and sadly, Philip Kane is dead.
yeah, he's one of the Red Hoods that are there at Ace Chemicals. He gets killed by the explosion. Gordon brings his task force in, then comes face to face with Batman for the first time, has a gun on him, um, and Alfred, or not Alfred, fucking Alfred, Batman in true Golden Age Batman style pulls a gun,
Pulls
and
a gun, which again, people forget that that's a thing that Golden Age Batman did.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, pulls a gun. It's not like actually loaded or anything, but like he shoots Gordon out of the way.
yeah.
Um, this sort of like this bar comes falling down on him. Batman escapes and goes after Red Hood one.
Who was going to escape on a helicopter, which is just a Joker image.
Oh yeah,
Like,
him hanging off like the rope ladder of the helicopter. Batman grapples around Red Hood one's leg, pulls him down into it. They have this great physical standoff between the two of them, and we get the moment. Red Hood one is they're on like this crosswalk above these vats of acid. One of the vats blows. Red Hood one is there. He falls, and Batman tries to reach after him. He is unsuccessful, and as Red Hood 1 falls into the vat of acid, he smiles, and we get this great full page where it's just this green circle with the body sort of boiling in there, and
um,
that's
I,
technically where the issue ends.
well, I also have one more thing to say. I really like that the decision is to made not to be like a. It's not like a. Did he fall or was he pushed? No, he fell.
Yeah, he
Like
fell, and
the hand was
hell,
being reached.
he chose to fall. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
he says, "Come on, now it's over." Ha! You wouldn't you like to think so? No, see, it's only just beginning.
Mm.
And that's the
So
Joker.
yeah,
Will
it's he's just the Joker there. At that point, falling in the acid is just dressing him up. That's all you're doing.
And now we are at some backup stories.
Yeah, so we actually open on the backup story to Batman 24, but then we have the other three backup stories from 21, 22, and 23.
Yes.
So I don't want to spend too much time on the backup stories. I just kind of want to
Uh,
get to Dark City, but I do want to talk about this first one here from Batman 24. We get some nice little like wrap up dialogue here between Bruce and Alfred. We say like what's happened sort of after the fallout of the Ace Chemicals explosions.
basically explaining, yeah, we made sure Bruce was, actually seen. We have the image of a broken down amusement park with Gordon investigating.
Also,
Um,
these backup stories are drawn by Raphael Albuquerque.
yes.
Um, who I like, I mean, obviously, he's no Greg Capullo, but he's
Isn't he
still good.
currently on Detective?
No, or maybe.
I think he's currently drawing Detective comics.
Then his
Uh,
arts, if it is, then his art style has changed because I'm currently reading Detective.
yeah, I think this is a very intentional art style shift though, like with the
Oh yeah.
idea.
Mhm.
Like I think this is meant to be the I wa- I want to tribute David Mazzucchelli.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna tribute.
It looks kind of like scratchy, like a Mazzucchelli art piece, and it looks nice. But yeah, we're just sort of wrapping up here. But of course, the moment that we're leading up to here is when the airways of Gotham are taken over by this green screen with some question marks, and we see this masked figure, sort of Zorro like, wearing green and purple, and uh, and he sends this message out to the city that he is the Riddler. I am here to make you smarter. It's my mission, my calling, my duty. So let's start, shall we? Now, there are two sisters. Each gives birth to the other. Who are they? Um, and it's just great. So he
It's
sends out this message to everyone, blows up these towers, and sends the city into darkness.
Into Darkness. I also find it interesting that it's actually a riddle from Greek mythology. It's
Oh, is
the
it?
it's they call it out as It's the riddle of the Sphinx, the lesser known second riddle.
Okay.
Because
Huh.
the one that everyone knows is the one where the answer is a man.
Yeah.
What walks on four legs in the morning, two at midday, three in the evening?
Yeah. Um. Yeah.
Um,
Yes. That's cool. I actually didn't know that. But yeah.
yeah.
So we send the City in the Blackness. That's where Volume 1 technically ends. But we have these nice little backup stories here. Also Raphael Albuquerque, who does these backup stories from 21, 22, and 23.
Uh,
Um.
the first one is, and they're basically little glimpses into Bruce's life
Before he
pre
came back
coming
to
back.
Gotham. Yeah. So
Um,
I do like how the title pages are done though. Like Bruce Wayne and where the hell did he learn to drive? And James Tynion also co-writes these backup
these,
stories.
yeah, and they're fairly short. I love them all. Like this first one is very quippy,
Hmm.
and I really like it. And Albuquerque's style actually really works for what they're going for with these.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's nice. Little car chase scene, nothing insane. The second one is Bruce Wayne in that one time. Same team on it, nothing insane. But it's cool. It's nice. I don't know. I don't really have much to
it's
say
Bruce
on that.
trying to basically trying to escape from a test, learning his technical skills.
Mhm.
Um,
And then
but
we finish. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the final one
Yeah, which
is
is
the
uh,
pit,
the pit. Yeah.
or
Bruce.
in the pit, or no, it's just the pit.
You know,
It's
Bruce Wayne in the pit. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is a nice flashback because you get to see. I think that's supposed to be Talia al Ghul.
Yeah. Yep. But it
Um,
should be. Yeah.
yeah, which because of the timeline, let's remind you, audience, she's got to be pregnant with Damian Wayne at this point, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she probably already had Damien.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's how timelines work.
Yeah. Thank you, New 52.
Again, this first volume ends with the script to issue 21.
Did you actually read it?
I did. I really enjoyed reading it.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
There are some
Cool.
differences. We won't go into it. It's more of a bonus thing, and I think interesting just to see how comic strips are formatted, what sort of cues Snyder gives Capullo. Um,
Hmm.
I love how conversational it almost is in his notes as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Where he's like you could tell like at least by this point like him and Capullo had formed a very like casual relationship and how they worked together. And it's
Did
just
they work together on the Detective Comics run they did pre New 52?
on
Is
Black Mirror now.
no. Okay.
No,
No.
yeah. I'm not even sure what Capullo was doing pre Court of Owls.
I know they must have. I think they worked together on something, but it might not have been a Batman thing
But
before.
like Batman is like what really made them as a team and why they're still working together to this day because they're very good together.
They are.
But yeah, before we move into the second volume of Zero Year, I do want to mention our last Twitter question for today. English Giraffe at English_Giraffe says, how would you compare this comic to the Batman 2022, both in terms of Riddler's depiction and how Gotham is depicted?
Um, I'll start with the Riddler. Um, Similar in some very interesting key ways. Um, Especially with the whole idea of the Riddler as kind of a man-child who doesn't
Mhm.
like being beaten. Um,
Yeah.
Especially
Also,
with his
also, I mean,
downfall.
we haven't talked about Dark City yet, but like his plan is very similar.
His plan is similar. Gotham is they grabbed Gotham just straight off the pages of just this entire run.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
necessarily say this arc in particular. Um, I'd like to see the Batman 2 do Court of Owls even more after reading Zero Year because
Oh, definitely.
they
Because you
could
could
do
tell, like,
something.
you could tell Reeves likes this run, you know?
Oh
I
yes.
mean, hell, like, I remember getting really excited because I think the Batman 2022 is the first time Snyder and Capullo have ever been credited in, like, the special thanks section. And,
It
like,
must have been
yeah.
because like
Um,
all of
yeah.
Zack Snyder's was ripping Frank Miller basically.
Pretty much,
Uh,
yeah. Which again, we should mention, like we talk about Frank Miller a lot in bad ways, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you're only really pulling from his two best
yeah,
works. You
you're
know?
he didn't Zack Snyder didn't try to pull from All
Yeah,
Star Batman and
exactly. He,
Robin.
he didn't try to do All Star Batman. He didn't try doing Dark Knight Strikes Again or anything like that. Like it's
Um,
he
but
pulled from the good
but
ones.
he had a very specific vision, a vision that isn't my favorite vision of the character.
And that's fair. I get that. I mean, honestly, I think Snyder does Frank Miller Batman better than Frank Miller.
Very probably.
Yeah.
But also, and even before this, like what the movie before this would have been Dark Knight Rises, which is what Nightfall crossed with No Man's
Nightfall,
Land.
No Man's Land, any sort of like, you know, Batman end of Batman style story.
That's a bunch of that one's a bunch of let's do some classics like
Yeah. Well, some classics that had never been adapted though either, because nobody
yeah
had ever tried to actually do Nightfall on screen, let alone no one has ever tried to do before or after No Man's Land.
yes
Um, I think that's really interesting. I think more people should do No Man's Land because there's a lot of potential there in that story. But
yeah.
anyway, speaking of No Man's Land, Riddler has just made Gotham a No Man's Land.
Yeah.
Let's go into Batman Volume 5, Zero Year Dark City, or just if you're reading from the complete edition, Batman 25. So once again, we get a very similar cover to 21.
But this time it's all dark.
Yeah,
because Dark City.
Yeah, get into Dark City. Ha ha ha. But yeah, so what do you make of these sequences here? We get a couple of these. This first sort of military one. What did you make of these when you first read?
I really like them. I think they've really fleshed out. One, they flesh out a lot of the like background ideas of what the Riddler's doing. We'll see it at the end of this issue. So, like, because we flash back again near the end, and you see one of the helmets says Tokyo Moon, which was in the background of Edward Nygma's conspiracy room, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and we do mention it again later on in this run, so it's cool.
So it's all ideas. I think Snyder is very smart about setup and payoff of like plans because the Riddler's a hard character to write for.
Oh yeah.
The Batman made him intelligent, but they didn't make him super genius who always gets everything right.
Yeah.
Like which works very much for what that movie is trying to do, but it's not necessarily the comics character.
Yeah, like here, like Riddler is a super genius in every way possible, and it's great. So let's get right into this though. We go back to present day. The city has just been blacked out, and we get our first look at what the actual Batmobile is in this, which is a very cool idea. Actually, I do like it.
I love how Commissioner Loeb is just portrayed as such a bastard.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no other way to write Loeb, you know.
Unless you're Christopher Nolan and you make
yes,
him a good guy.
I was actually just thinking that after I said that. I was like, yeah, actually, he's kind of a character in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, like he's sympathetic.
But,
yeah. Also, Zeppelins.
I mean, they have to be here. It's Gotham. Come on.
It's Gotham.
Yeah. It's the Warner Brothers logo, you know. That's how I'll always think of it because the Batman.
Oh yeah, because the animated series.
Because the Warner Brothers logo turns into the Zeppelin. It's great. But yeah, so we go. Yeah, so Loeb is like giving commands as the Batmobile sort of like drives through this area. I love the way like the wheels move on its side, like as it like leaps above these cop cars.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Not design wise, but just in the purpose that it serves. The Batmobile in Batman Returns specifically.
I get that, yeah.
Where it does shit. A car cannot do this shit.
Oh yeah, isn't there also the bit in like Batman Forever where it like drives right up a wall, like at a really weird angle though? Like it doesn't like dive straight into the driving up a wall. Like it stops, goes up onto the wall, and then drives up it.
I think that's what Snyder is going for.
yeah. But yeah, so we go over to this this area here where we sort of see like sort of these mangled bodies.
A fucking terrifying image, my God! Like,
I was like, I mean, once again, there's at least like one moment in all of these Snyder arcs where you're reminded that like this team started.
Snyder is a horror writer.
Snyder's a horror writer, and Capullo is a horror artist. Like you can tell in like at least one moment in all of their works. And
what's interesting is we basically have the next bit of the plot takes inspiration for a long while from going way back into like Detective Comics 29, I think, like, or very early first year of Batman shit with the character Dr. Death.
Yeah. Did they actually name drop him here yet or no? Comes back later.
I don't think they name drop him yet.
Yeah, but once again, like, yeah, you're right. Like it's playing on a lot of those like very early Batman appearances, but putting that wonderful like gothic Scott Snyder spin on it. Like Doctor
Also,
Death,
Harvey Bullock is here.
Harvey Bullock is here, and it's very nice. A young Harvey Bullock.
He's not smoking, but he does have a flashlight in his mouth.
Yeah,
I like to imagine, and this is probably the intention. He's like, well, I'd like to be, a good cop, and it's not professional to smoke at work, but my God, I need a cigar right now.
yeah, yeah. I get that.
Uh, I also
Um,
thought we might be doing poison ivy stuff because they're like, this is also kind of a greenhouse, and I'm like, ooh, are we
I
doing
would,
some poison
I would
ivy?
love to see Scott Snyder do a Poison Ivy arc. I think that'd be really
Okay,
cool.
it is a shame that he hasn't if he hasn't done one yet.
I
Like
mean, I think does she get a small appearance later on?
she has a
It's not.
small appearance here, but it's not as poison ivy. It's as Dr.
It,
Pamela,
yeah.
which I
Um,
like, but I just wish Snyder give him like a one shot or something where he can do poison ivy.
yeah. I think you could do some like really cool horror stuff with that.
And because again, Snyder is just an interesting writer, just in general. Um, but yeah, we get
There is a really good Scott Snyder Two Face story in All Star Batman.
the one good All Star
The
Batman,
good All Star Batman.
which
Here's the
we
thing.
better read
Here's the
that at
thing.
some
All
point.
Star has a really bad reputation because of Frank Miller. When actually the three main, well, not counting All Star Western because that's ongoing, the three like big All Star titles, like All Star Batman and Robin, All Star Superman, and All Star Batman, two out of three of those are really good.
I mean, I
And
know people say All Star Superman is like the one of the definitive Superman stories.
oh, definitely.
Um,
I mean, it's Grant Morrison,
yeah,
so
they're
there's
they're
that.
they're an
And
insane motherfucker, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Frank Quitely is one of the best Superman artists out there. So yeah,
I've seen some of Quitely's artwork in the Sandman. He did some stuff for that.
yeah.
Um,
But specifically how like Quitely draws the distinction between Clark and Superman. Like I love that. We'll definitely be covering that someday.
yes.
It's such a great
Um,
story.
but yeah, again, the real horror of just these mangled bodies looking like trees, and the idea of just their bones growing out of them, um, juxtaposed with Batman making the city better, giving people hope. Um, like these lovely little lights in the darkness. They're not like we don't have a bat signal yet, but it's just in a page, and it's a beautiful thing in the page.
Yeah. Then we get our scene with Pamela Isley, which is severely underutilized. But we do get our first sort of glimpse at Doctor Death here. We kind of see their face. Um,
This dude in basically man in a hoodie with this wonky hand
mhm.
and a face that I don't even think a mother could love. Um,
But yeah, then we go back to the Batcave. We're trying to like get some information on Edward Nigma. Um, and I don't know, it's great. Like, it's great to see like once again Snyder utilizing Bruce's intelligence here.
um, yeah, just trying to work out like what does Nigma really want? Like he put the power off, but why?
What does that actually accomplish? But yeah, so we go on with that. Um, Bruce leaves the Batcave then and is met by Jim Gordon, which is just I love the way that first panel is drawn when they first see each other.
Yeah, it's this great idea of it's like, oh, he also just looks so caught off guard.
Yeah, and
Like
Gordon's so calm, like he's just like, "Hey, how you doing?"
it's like, oh, please go on, Mr. Wayne. I've been listening to you.
Mhm.
Again, bringing in the idea that there's a possibility in year one that by the end of that story, Gordon realizes who Batman is,
Mhm.
just won't ever say it.
It's that. I mean, I personally never really subscribed to these ideas, other than maybe the Joker situation from like Death of the Family, where like they say like a lot of these key Batman characters are just willfully ignoring that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I agree for Gordon. I think Gordon
Mm, I think
knows.
that's tough to say with Gordon,
But I think it also sometimes maybe depends on the writer just a little bit.
because then I think it makes it especially difficult when you bring up that his daughter is Batgirl.
That's true. Like that's the one thing. But like with things like this, I like the idea as a possibility.
I
Um,
get that.
Also, I love how cocky Gordon is,
Oh yeah.
and genuinely kind of sad, and we'll understand why. I love what Snyder does with that. Like it's such a different take.
Mhm.
But also clearly sets up like these two men are going to be very close friends
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
later. But yeah. Also,
Gor- Gordon ends up asking about what's down there in the cave. And they like sort of like awkwardly try to avoid it as Gordon starts to look down there. Like Bruce activates this little, like beacon that sends these bats out of the cave, and they attack Gordon. It like makes a cut on his face, and Gordon decides to leave. It's great. It's I mean, if again, once again, if we're comparing it to year one, like the equivalent to this scene of Bruce like sort of shaking Gordon off his tail is the scene where he has the supermodels in
yeah,
the manor.
I like this scene so much better though, just because the supermodels work, especially for the tone that year one is going for.
Yeah, but here, I mean, you still get that snarky Bruce Wayne here.
Yeah, but
Um,
it just it again, we don't have to bring in basically prostitutes.
yeah,
Uh,
I mean, yeah, but there is also, yeah, I mean, there's the idea here too that like Bruce is, uh, like Bruce is still like using his intelligence within the scheme. Like it's not just like he's throwing out his intelligence for the
yeah,
sake of the scheme and like getting Gordon off his tail. But
it's also it's just it's so simple.
mhm. Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
and it's like yeah, we have backup generators, rich family. Also, there are pests. So just
yeah,
yeah,
and that's all it is.
that's all
We
it
go over
is.
to Gotham University and we meet one Lucius Fox.
Who is a character I don't think has appeared on Fresh Face Comics yet.
Hasn't he?
Outside of Batman Begins and Dark Knight, I don't think he really has.
Wow.
Yeah,
Huh.
he's one of those Batman side characters that I think only really got started to really get used a lot after probably he was, Morgan Freeman played him.
Yeah.
Because, I
Yeah, no, I
mean,
get yeah. Yeah.
it's Morgan Freeman. And yes, Morgan Freeman was the voice I heard because it's Morgan
It's
Freeman.
a very close contender for me is actually the Arkham Knight Lucius Fox. It's the only Arkham game they use him in, and
Ah,
I
see,
really do like his voice in that. I mean, it's kind of Morgan Freeman inspired, but it's a bit more like general. Like if you don't want to imagine the narrator of everyone's life in your head, there's this guy too.
yeah. Also, I
Um,
was just surprised with how much of a role Lucius actually plays in this book.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought it might just be a quick cameo.
No,
Um,
no. The idea is always that Lucius Fox it plays a big role in how Batman becomes Batman, and they
yes.
utilize that here. So yeah,
Um,
get a nice little scene here. Lucius actually tricks Bruce here, which is really cool. Because
I didn't see this and I was like, oh, this has changed
yeah,
things a lot. Is he
because
working
Lucius
with the villain?
yeah, but
Because we get basically
Lucius is very obviously being threatened by Doctor Death here.
we get the Doctor Death's sort of backstory. Helfrin is his name. Helfern is his name. Um,
Mhm.
he was brought onto Gotham University and worked in nanomedicine, and was like this great idea of like possibly fixing bones using nanotechnology, which is just a cool sci-fi style idea, which fits so well with like the aesthetic of the Snyder run.
Mhm.
Um, and then flipping it on to be horror also fits so well with what this run is doing.
Yeah, yeah, and again, we see Doctor Death's design here at the end. Like, oh my God, look at that! Oh, that's fucking awful. I love it, but it's oh man, it's rough.
And we flash back basically to the army convoy
Mhm.
um, getting blown up, a scorpion stinging one of them. It's an image to end the issue on.
Yeah.
Um,
Then the covers actually start becoming really good here in Zero Year. We move into Batman 26, and I love this cover with the skeleton hand holding up Batman there in front of the silhouette of the city. Like, oh, it looks so good.
part of me, part of me wishes that this was used as like a collection cover at some point.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
It's used as the title page, which is good.
Hmm.
But yeah,
But we open on another great scene here. Like I love the opening here. Um, we see uh we see this sort of play on Bruce Wayne watching Zorro as a kid, and
he's in a
Gordon
movie theater with a giant tub of popcorn, being a
Gordon
happy
walks in
little
front of
kid.
him and says, "Bruce Wayne, you're under arrest," and that's the opening there. And you get this another really great title page for Zero Year Dark City, and it's
Kind of
great.
mimicking the film look of the previous way the panels were laid out. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Back to
So
present day. Dr. Death has Lucius in like a death grip. Um, is threatening him then, and Bruce Wayne tries to get up. He attacks Dr. Death. Dr. Death is not having that, so he throws Bruce against a wall, wraps a chain around Lucius's neck, and tries to kill him. Bruce is able to save him, of course, because we're not just going to kill off Lucius Fox.
no,
No,
um,
and
Doctor Death has a story to tell.
he does.
A story you'll want to hear. You see, this story, it's about you and something terrible that happens a long time ago. It's full of things you'd want to know, whispers, lies, and truth. Truth about a spoiled little rich boy with blood on his hands. Um, and then, Bruce basically uses what I think is like a magnet to pull him off of everybody and save
Mhm.
Lucius. So they're able to escape until Dr. Death regains his senses and attacks them. And my
Mhm.
fucking
And
god,
he's like mutated a bit more and is like
he looks
hunching
like a
over.
dinosaur man
He
almost,
does. Like, oh my god, it's horrifying. I
like
love it.
evil, creepy Stegosaurus man.
Yeah. Yeah. But Gordon comes in here, just when it seems like Dr. Death has won. Gordon comes in, shoots Dr. Death, and Dr. Death runs away. And Gordon and Lucius and Bruce are all safe for now. Um, we then go into a bit of a bizarre scene. It seems to be a bit of a dream sequence.
Dream sequence mixed with flashback of,
Mhm.
so I think, some things of what
But with
Bruce
the
was.
way that this half of the story really works for me, with these flashback sequences, is you could tell that they're all altered in some way. You could tell that, like, like Bruce is remembering them differently than they actually happened, and it's really cool. So like we're not exactly they're not like explicit here with like what is actually changed here, but we can assume that something is off.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce is inside what looks like a bomb,
Mhm.
like, and is dying. And there's a radio that snaps him back to life where, Alfred wakes him up in a hospital bed. Um, Bruce is like, right, I need to get back to the Batcave. I need to finish the signal jammer. I need to stop whatever the Riddler's planning. Because remember, the Riddler still has a plan. Like, this Dark City arc is mainly focused with let's focus on Dr. Death as a character. But the Riddler
Mhm.
is always there as this ever present threat. Um, Especially as the issues go on.
Oh
Also, he is
yeah.
handcuffed to the bed, and Gordon is there so they can have a little conversation.
Yep.
Um, and we flash back then again to Bruce being escorted from the theater as a child, driven around um, by Gordon and his partner Dan Corrigan, um, and they keep stopping everywhere and checking in on people.
Mhm.
And it's this nice image of, oh, Gordon still one of the best.
Yeah, that
Um,
he's like not actually going in with Corrigan or anything. Like it's just Corrigan is obviously doing dirty things, but Gordon is
yeah.
having no part of that.
Well, it's also like, and it's implied that whenever Gordon does go in, it's genuinely check in on people.
Hmm.
Also, we get this image of Gordon's trench coat that'll become important later.
Yep.
Um,
And then back in present day, Bruce sort of breaks out of his bed, grabs Gordon's gun and aims it at him, um, which is such a striking image. Just oh, I
because
love that.
Bruce remembers all of this, and we'll see
Hmm.
why in a later issue. Um, but it's like in that alley behind the theater, and what I remember most vividly from that night is this view of a barrel of a gun. Um,
So he hands back the gun to Gordon, um, is let go then, and we see that a riddle, or at least an envelope with a question mark on it, is left behind for Gordon. Gordon looks at it, says "Oh no," and we go over to Batman. Batman is going to visit some. Who's he visiting here? Who's he trying to visit?
uh, he's trying to approach the Newton Center.
Yeah,
Um,
and we see that the people, the I guess the scientists sort of working
yeah,
in
he's
this
visiting the
area.
scientists that have been working with who were working with Doctor Death before he got all mutated. Um, and basically working through Wayne Enterprises, because the whole point is that Doctor Death was working at Wayne Enterprises, brought on by Lucius Fox, who regrets it, obviously, because, well, you didn't expect him to become a supervillain.
Yeah.
And these two doctors also mutated and in grotesque ways. And in comes, I think this is Commissioner Loeb. If not,
Yeah.
it's
it's Loeb. Yep.
Because Loeb was just like, I need to murder the Bat. And opens fire on Batman.
Yep. And that's where the issue ends. We get a very Court of Owls style cover here for Batman 27, with the giant teeth on Batman, the sort of like Dr. Death fused Batman. Very reminiscent of the Maze issue from City or Court of Owls. Just I don't know, it's great. Love it.
Great.
Love it. Love it. Is this the big Frank Miller homage? No, it's the next one.
That's the next one.
Yeah. Okay.
But we start with a flashback to 1946.
Yeah.
Basically, post World War II, Tokyo, Japan, in sort of a club. It kind of reminds me of the opening a little bit to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
It does, yeah. Except she's not singing Anything Goes.
No.
Gotta tell you, I just, oh man, I gotta just like do a video someday just to get it out of my system, because I could always go on an Indiana Jones rant like all the fucking time about how much I adore those movies. Could we do that someday?
Yeah, I could.
Could we just get like a ridiculously large panel of people to talk about Indiana Jones for like 3 hours?
Well, when they released the trailer to Indiana Jones 5.
There we go. Perfect. That's all I want in this world. I just want an excuse to talk about Indiana Jones excessively.
Yeah. But this is also continuing the moon imagery, flashing forward to the 6 years ago present day. That's the one thing where it's like this is present. You're doing a flashback story.
Just call it the present. That's all it is. It's 12 issues in a row that take place 6 years ago. You could say the present. Yes. Yeah. That's a good chunk of the New 52 Batman run.
But Bruce manages to get a gas mask on, calls into the Batcave, tries to get up into the rafters, and we go very green for and a very neon for the coloring that kind of makes a lot of this issue abstract, which I love.
Yeah.
I love the idea.
Loeb and the rest of the cops there put these masks on as Batman escapes. He goes back into the sort of into the Bat boat and tries to get away.
There's an explosion from a grenade that Loeb left.
Yes, and Batman is sort of left there. He tries to escape again. Runs, jumps into the water.
Into the harbor.
And takes one of these tanks of what's in the tanks?
I think it's basically just CO2. He's shooting himself off.
Yeah, he shoots himself away. He gets far away from the police.
And then he doesn't, because he comes up. Batman, stop what you're doing. And get in the boat. And it's Jim Gordon.
Yeah, and Loeb is still looking for him. Loeb doesn't know where Batman is, but Gordon helps out Batman. And it's great. And there's this great little bit where he knows that Batman has to change his mask, or at least take it off for a little bit. And
we do get a little Frank Miller homage. It's I can't see without my glasses.
Yeah, so Gordon hands him his glasses as he continues to drive away. This is something that always bothers me. What is the term for driving a boat? Is it driving? Is there another word for it?
I don't know. I've never been really driven, or all the boats that I've been in charge of steering.
You fly a plane, you drive a car. What do you do to a boat? What do you do?
I think it's drive, because there is a steering wheel on speedboats.
I feel like there should really be another word for that.
Well, it's technically it should be row, but this isn't a boat you row.
Yeah.
You drive a boat.
Anyway, sorry for the semantics there. Anyway, so
what makes Batman pause is it's why should I listen to you? Because of Bruce Wayne. Wayne coming back to Gotham stirred something in me. Again, pinning it on Bruce and the positive influence that he has. And we flash back to Gordon discovering the shady dealings at an illegal dogfighting ring. That Loeb knows about and is going to be part of. Again, really just showing the corruption in Gotham.
Oh, yeah.
especially well for what this story is doing.
Mhm.
Literal dog eat dog world. They set dogs on Jim Gordon, and they haven't eaten in days, so they're very hungry.
Mhm.
And bloodied, he still manages to get through and pull his gun on his partner. Um, and then he just leaves to walk his damn beat. And we cut back to the present, and we see Jim Gordon basically silhouetted like the Riddler has been silhouetted in that backup issue,
Mhm.
specifically evoking the idea of Zorro. Uh, and again, doing the idea of people are inspired by Batman to do things.
Mhm.
Some of those things aren't necessarily good, but they are inspired.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get the classic Batman disappearing act.
Yep. It probably like the first time that this Batman has ever done it though. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I like the way it's done.
And he somehow manages to get Gordon's glasses into Gordon's pocket.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, we go back to the Bat Cave. Bruce is getting the jammer put together. Alfred is, making him eat food because, well, drinking a nutritional shake. Um, but still trying to get him to, consume food and not starve himself
Mhm.
because Alfred is basically the dad to the Bat family. Um, what would we do without him?
Yeah.
Um, and they have this really nice, again, a continuing discussion. All the Bruce Alfred discussions in this arc
Oh yeah.
really
It's like
shine.
if we're talking about influence on the Batman 2022, like the Bruce Alfred relationship is literally that relationship.
It indeed is. Um, but yeah, it's also one where I think it's just really interesting, just the way things go. It's like, and it ends with Bruce asking, how would I be punishing you? And it's like, well, by making the us bear witness. And then we get the Dark Knight Returns tribute.
Yep.
Um,
Get a nice little image of him on the wire there. As I'm assuming that's Barbara. It could be
it's
James,
it's
but
Barbara.
I'm assuming it's Barbara. Did they say explicitly that it's Barbara or
They
no?
don't, but I very much think it has to be.
I mean, it could be either.
Um,
It could be Barbara or James, but considering how much the New 52 focused on Barbara, I would guess it's Barbara. But yeah, so Batman goes underground then and finds more of Doctor Death's victims.
Figures out where he is, and we see that beaten up helmet of saying Tokyo Moon.
Hmm.
Basically revealing that a lot of these flashbacks have been to Doctor Death himself. Um, and then he finds the lab, and then Edward Nigma breaks through the signal, um, and figures out, you know, um, and basically figures out how to try to sink the Batman. Triggers an explosion, asks him a riddle, all about the city and what the city's going to be, because this is where your part of the story ends. Um, and that is issue, and that's the end of the issue.
Yeah.
Bruce is
So
drowning.
yeah, so there was a break between this and the next issue of Zero Year. There was a Batman Eternal tie-in, which is weird because it's just a tease for Batman Eternal. Like it doesn't actually tie into anything. It's just saying like in a future Gotham, this is what's gonna happen in about a year when Batman Eternal happens, and that's all it was.
I wonder if it's because they needed like a minute to get through this.
Yeah, it's possible, especially because the next issue is double length, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. There are a lot of like just randomly double length issues in Zero Year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining because they're good issues, but
But
it's
it's all just fairly random.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so moving to Batman number 29. Um, so yeah, open another one of these really striking flashbacks here with Bruce, Thomas, and Martha. Um, Bruce is of course in trouble here for running away from his parents.
and
Um,
sneaking into the movies. And the thing that Thomas has to ask is, what did you think?
it's so good. I love this. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan, of course, of the idea that like Thomas and Martha were also involved in like some of the shadier sides of Gotham, which I mean Snyder still does sort of lean into at times. But it's moments
But
like
they're
this that I
still
think,
good people at heart.
yeah, and it's moments like this coupled with like the one backup story from City of Owls that shows them running away from the Talons, that like, like you could have both sides of his parents and
Yeah.
and
They
and
also
have them
clearly care about their
coexist.
son.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like, it's like, oh, we'll start going out to the movies together as a family.
Mhm.
Um, like seeing them going to the movies, and they're gonna start with The Mask of Zorro, which is, if you know, you know, because that's how this all started.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so we go back to present day. Batman, again, just that great horror imagery that Snyder and Capullo pull off. He like breaks out of this pile of bones and skulls and all that. Um, we see Gordon starting to rally up people. We see a nice little appearance of Harper and Colin Rowe,
yeah, yeah, who I wasn't expecting to show up.
but they're here.
They're
They're here.
here.
Yeah.
But he's basically trying to get people out because the city's flooding and they're out of power, and this is, just dangerous.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, this whole idea of, Bruce, Batman is in contact with Gordon this time, and is working everything out, and has
Mhm.
basically realized, don't turn the power back on. That's what Nigma's hoping for.
Yeah.
Um, and Loeb, being Commissioner Loeb, will not listen.
Mhm.
Uh,
But in comes a Zeppelin that is not GCPD and is much larger than a GCPD Zeppelin. And they realize who it is, and you get
it's
your.
the goddamn Batman.
They say it. They fucking
Now,
say it.
because this is Loeb saying it, it gets a pass.
Yeah, yeah, but also again, like it's I don't know. For some reason, it's just one of those Frank Miller references that really works here. Um,
I think it's because Snyder is calling out just how ridiculous the goddamn Batman is. Like,
well, I mean, here's the thing: like Zero Year, despite being a really dark story, is kind of
oh
ridiculous.
yeah,
We already called out some of the corny dialogue that Batman has.
it's good
Um,
corny dialogue
yeah,
though.
Doctor Death is a play on an old Golden Age villain, and
Immediately after the goddamn Batman, like Alfred's like, a bat blimp, sir, really?
work with what you have. It's just like I could almost hear like George Clooney saying that in the way he
Yes.
delivered shit in Batman and Robin. Work with what you have.
And here
It's
I
like,
thought you'd given all your dirigibles to the police.
I
I
never
never
said
said
that.
all.
Yeah, it's great.
Uh,
But yeah, it's yeah. So he goes in with the blimp. Um, Once again, Gordon is trying to rally people up. Um, and
and Bruce is putting his faith in Jim Gordon.
mhm.
Correctly, because Jim is, Jim fucking Gordon.
Yeah, yeah.
Jim calls his old partners like, right, you need to stop. You need to stop. And he just gets cut off because Dan Corrigan's a bastard.
Mhm.
Um, Again, we get some great lightning. Um, the bat blimp is going down because, of course, it is.
Yep.
Um,
And Batman makes his jump out of the Bat blimp, and we get a Dark Knight Returns homage. And it's
this is just so Capullo can homage the first cover of The Dark Knight
and
Returns.
honestly, I like it more than the Dark Knight Returns cover. Like it's so good.
I
The
mean,
sort of the like pink lightning and just like the overall like more agile silhouette of Batman looks so fucking cool.
oh yeah, because in Dark Knight Returns, he's just this tank of a man, which works for that, but
Hmm.
like only that. It doesn't work for other things.
Yeah, I get
But yeah, he
that.
lands and Doctor Death is back.
Yeah, and he has mutated so fucking much, and it's terrifying, and I love it. Um, Gordon then goes in to talk to Riddler, or not talk to Riddler, but just get Riddler, you know.
Yeah, in
Um,
Philip Kane's office, where Riddler's just kicking back in a swivel chair,
mhm. Because
string tied.
because he's perfectly holding up this giant boulder that could crush Jim Gordon with a string tied to his finger. Um, and I love that. It's so cool. So Gordon like jumps out of the way, the boulder drops. Um, Batman is fighting Doctor Death.
Also,
Uh,
I love how Newman's like, oh wait, now I remember what I tied that string there for,
it's so good.
because he's so smug. The Doctor Death fight is just pure horror.
Oh yeah,
Um,
and like you could tell that like just the way that Capullo draws Doctor Death, like you could see like just how physically uneven the match is because Doctor Death is so much stronger here.
yes. Um, it also really, we get some really interesting backstory because villains can't stop monologuing.
Yeah. Oh, there's
Eh,
so much monologue in the middle of this fight.
but it's great monologues. It's just like he was trying to cure himself. He worked with Nigma to try to, save his life, and he's kind of gone corrupted. And the Sully's like, well, it's a start, Batman. I probably won't live to see it finished. Neither will you. And he attacks, and just we get some beautiful art with no dialogue over this
Mhm.
black over the signal jammer,
Batman almost loses the jammer.
and then it does basically get destroyed by Doctor Death.
It falls off, and the fight continues. Doctor Death continues to mutate. He like all these extra like squiggly appendages form off of him, and
He asks for death, but Bruce refuses to oblige.
mhm,
Um, and he's, it's like, you are a warrior, aren't you? Um, and he gets this monologue about he's from a family of warriors, all spread out just across 2 pages.
mhm,
Um, and well, it builds into Wayne Tower. Batman is pleading, the city deserves to live.
mhm.
It's like, it's like, no, the people of Gotham need to understand when they look up into the sky, they need to see an empty white circle. They need to know that light. It's a hollow promise, an eye watching no one ever. What do you say to that, Batman? What do you say? I say boom.
The tower explodes. Mutates Doctor Death even more. He's so messed up at this point. By the next page, like the appendages are like coming out of his face and over his eyes, and you could see how much is messing up and making him bleed.
He's basically just dying. And at that
Yeah,
moment, they get the lights back on.
and
Question.
all the grid forms as a question mark. Um, one of the officers says, "Oh no," as Riddler is just casually staying there among the civilians below.
Well
Um,
then, oops. Wrong answer, Gotham. Dunk tank for you all initiate in 5 minutes.
the timer begins. The question mark goes off in the tower. Um, and then the explosions start going off, and the city is indeed flooded.
All
Once
the
again,
retaining walls are blown in an already flooding city, because the city's already flooding before this. The idea is that it's, a bad storm already.
yeah. But yeah, so the city starts to flood once again. If we're talking comparisons to Batman 2022, it's right here. We flood the city. Also brings us back to where the story began in the first flashback at the beginning of Volume 1. Yeah, so the city completely floods. We get another flashback to when Thomas and Martha take Bruce to see Zorro. Um, Bruce begins to break away from the tower. The blimp crashes into the tower as we're playing it alongside the death of Thomas and Martha Wade once more. The city falls into ruins as it's flooded and everything comes crashing down. And all this last page is a little Bruce Wayne screaming help.
Help. In some of the most horrific depictions of the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Oh yeah, because like you see the fucking gunshot go through Martha's head. Like, oh, it's awful. Ugh. So this takes us into Batman number 30, which is the start of the third act of Zero Year. So it has the sort of same cover with the different colors of
A
just the
very
bat symbol and
green
Zero Year.
cover,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which
very representative of what this last third like whole aesthetic is.
if
But
I
yeah,
had
so
to say, I'd say like each of like the thirds really have like a color as an aesthetic. Like the first third is very blue. The second third is very red,
mhm,
red orangey, and this last third is fucking green.
yeah.
Which is
Um,
again kind of a shame that they didn't try to integrate Poison Ivy into this at all.
yeah.
But
But we
oh
open
well.
on like my one of my like it's just my favorite flashback. I fucking love this bit. Like a teenage Bruce Wayne going to see this girl named Julie Madison,
Again,
who
another
who
Golden Age
yeah, who is also
character.
another Golden Age homage, a classic Bruce Wayne love interest.
Isn't she like
Uh,
the first love interest for Bruce Wayne?
I believe so. Yeah,
Like at least the first written, not necessarily the first,
yeah,
because continuity changes that. But
yeah.
like
But yeah. So I mean, yeah. So she's there. He goes to see her. They talk for a little bit. They're in love.
he's a
Whatever.
dorky teenager, and I love it.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, it's so cute. If I wasn't committed to Batcat.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna say Scott. I'll say this: Scott Snyder does use Julie Madison more later on in his
Ooh,
run,
that's interesting.
so it's not just a one-off for Zero Year. But yeah,
But like,
so he sees her face is all bloody. Obviously this is another one of those warped flashbacks. But
and
we
it
go to present
is
day. You see
we
Zero
get
Year.
our
It says Savage City. Um, and we see Bruce here. He's sort of like waking up from presumably a coma. Um,
there's a glass next to him with an R on the side of it because interesting. He wakes up. He's like on a bed in what's clearly like a kid's room that I
mhm,
love. I love like ooh, it hits and sitting at a desk.
is one
Baby
Duke
Duke
Thomas.
Thomas.
Yeah, little Duke Thomas. So I mentioned this to you on a Discord call actually that we had between you reading this and now. Um, but you were like you didn't realize that Duke Thomas was introduced here. But the R imagery here, I told you to keep in mind that that Damian had just been killed off fairly recently in Batman Incorporated. Um, so the idea was like like what who is Duke Thomas? Could he be the next Robin now that Damian's gone? And of course we were always going to bring Damian back, but at the time like that was fairly up in the air, and
Yeah,
Duke Thomas could have been.
and he immediately makes his mark. Like because this is the
Mhm.
first bit where you really see him as a character and not just a scared little kid running from some gang members.
Mhm. We get to look outside here. I love this two-page spread of just the overgrown city with the question mark tower above it all.
Yeah. Duke is trying to do riddles and crosswords because, see, Mr. Wayne, welcome to Zero Year. That's what
That
Mr.
he said
Riddler
it.
calls it. He says there's just one rule now: get smart or die. Which I love the concept of what Zero Year actually means.
Mhm.
It's this Riddler as this mad king in his castle, making
Mhm.
everyone dance like almost an Emperor Nero-esque figure fiddling as Rome burns and
No,
doing the
I
burning.
love the idea that like like this is what Snyder does with the three-thirds of Zero Year. It's like each one has like its own main villain, but I really wish that this part of Zero Year took up more of the story. Um,
Almost, yeah, but I think
yeah,
it's almost perfect the way it is.
I
Um,
get that. Yeah, but anyway, we see
Jim Gordon.
speaking of overgrown, he has a beard. So yeah, he's sort of like keeping an eye on everything down here.
Won't
Um,
quit smoking to save his life, which like that's just Jim Gordon.
Yeah, and once again, a play on the other things that Snyder has touched on in his run with Gordon's character.
Yeah, but
So,
there's already this idea of like this network of people underground trying to stop Riddler and figure it all out.
mhm,
Uh, Bruce immediately calls his father, aka Alfred.
yes,
Um,
and sees what everything is. Alfred sort of catches him up on everything that's happened in the meantime.
uh,
Um,
I love, I love this idea of just the Riddler as the madman with a bomb. That he's rigged explosives. Everything will blow up if
mhm.
anyone tries to get in. Um, which is kind of an interesting play on No Man's Land because isn't No Man's Land like it's not like a mad villain running Gotham.
No, oh no, yeah, no, it's a free for all for
It's
like
a free for all. This is a
yeah,
madman running the city like a king.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's like this all deadly playground. People are also just have been broken down because time has passed.
Mhm.
Bruce has been out for months,
Yeah.
uh, which is a terrifying image.
Mhm.
Um, but it's this idea of like Alfred's alive. Bruce thinks he failed. It's like, well, what are you gonna do? I don't know, but he's beaten me twice now, each time worth worse consequences. I lose this time. Then maybe it's time for the reasonable thing. Um, and you can help effectively from out here at the manor. The escape passes between the brownstone and Crime Alley, your former headquarters. It leads to the water raids. Remember, it's likely the one way out, one of the only ways out of Gotham right now. It's this great of like get out and save everyone.
Mhm.
But then, and he almost is going to do it. But then Duke stops him.
And again, just shows you like so much potential in Duke's character. And
Like,
like why Snyder is obviously setting him up to at least be part of the Bat family.
yeah, but he's also just an adorable kid who's like, I want this to end. My parents are sick. I'd like to, see this end. So his grandmother is sick. It's like, so she's in the next apartment on the IV. And he's doing this crossword. He asks, what's a six-letter word for hit or miss? All it takes is one riddle, Mr. Wayne. See, every sunset he comes onto that big screen in Midtown, the one with the question mark blinking on it. Mr. Riddler comes on and says if anyone can ask a riddle he can't answer, he'll give the city back to the people. It's why I got these puzzles out, you see, Mr. Wayne. I'm going to take him on. Just the bravery in this child, like...
Oh, yeah.
Like, I already called that, like, if he answers your riddle, you're probably dead because he's a madman. Like, that's not like a twist or anything.
No, that's just what's gonna happen, But yeah, we see meanwhile down on the ground we see that Gordon has like his is like sort of like getting in trouble with or sorry, no, like these are actually like his men that he's getting together.
He's not really in control of them, but he's trying to help out where he can.
Yeah. We see that one of these examples of like where they're talking to his people above
with
them
a
all.
Brilliant monologue all about kings
like just the way that Snyder writes Riddler, like just all of his dialogue absolutely shines.
He's also grown sideburns and become more ostentatious just as time goes by, which I love. And he gets annoyed that no one immediately steps forward.
Yeah, because Riddler just wants that challenge, even though for him it's no challenge.
And someone steps forward. Bob Cheap, Howard Industries' lead strategist or former strategist, they gave him the axe to get me in after I left Wayne Enterprises. And he doesn't even get a riddle out before Riddler answers it correctly. Which I think is actually a clever way for Snyder to get away with actually writing a bunch of riddles.
Yeah, because you just need like this very basic setup and like get like halfway through it, and then Riddler is able to answer it because he's just that smart.
It's like, well, no, because I know who you are. Given your obsession with Sonic Warfare, Bob, not to mention that awful jazz library you left behind, which, motherfucker, I hate you even more now. For those who don't know, I play trumpet, and playing trumpet means you play a lot of jazz.
Indeed.
It's not a great leap to assume your riddle would lean towards a sort of auditory snobbery. Some facts about listening, and since turtles have no ears, I can only assume that you get the idea. And he's killed.
Yep. And just so good. But yeah, then a light turns on above like Gordon and his men. He's found by Riddler, but what is it? He doesn't actually like go out and attack him yet. But he sends this building toppling down on them, or at least like that's going to eventually topple down on them.
Like a string of dominoes.
Yeah.
After some of Gordon's men play traitor and are like, "Can we talk in private and surrender?" No, okay, we're doing dominoes, which terrifying imagery.
Yep.
So much property damage.
Oh yeah. But yeah, meanwhile, Batman contacts Gordon. He comes out from the side of this corner, and
shouts them to shoot the eye. Damn it, the camera drone. He told you to be fast pupils. Do it, Lieutenant, which is a great pun. Fast pupils, as in the pupil of an eye.
Yeah. But yeah, so they take out this drone. Batman escapes with the men, or he doesn't go with them, but they get away. He knocks down this water tower, which allows Gordon and the men to escape. They actually meet up with Batman then, and we get a nice like full look of like the sort of like the survival Batman suit, which I think looks really cool, especially with the purple gloves and the exposed arms.
It really works. Also, I love how Gordon described it. Gentlemen, meet my friend, the fucking psycho in a bat suit.
It's so good.
And he's just got this dopey smile in Craig Capullo's art, and I love it. It's
he's so Like, oh, it's so good. I mean, I love Greg Capullo so much, and then we get this great one where they hold where they like shake hands, and that's
It's
the end
like,
of the
I
issue.
was doing a crossword, got caught on a 6-letter word for hit or miss. The answer, Lieutenant, they both say, was strike. Damn right, and call me Jim.
Oh, so good, so good. Moving to Batman number 31, which is the cover of the Dark City trade.
Again,
Um,
beautiful cover. I
oh
like
yeah,
the image of Batman with a bow.
yeah,
Like I don't want to say have it more often, but
yeah. Because that's if you want that, just watch Arrow.
yeah.
But but uh, but no, yeah, no, it's just a great image. I like that a lot.
And
We
we meet up
open,
with Lucius Fox.
yeah, it was nice to see her again. Um, he's met by Batman and Gordon. They take Lucius in, who's
I
willing to
love how
help
he's
them.
monologuing about how he's like, he's like, I'm gonna challenge Riddler, but I feel at peace with my death. Like, then again, sunlight's overrated because Bruce is here, and we form a nice trio.
Yeah.
Which again, we're also doing these Batman needs a family. These may
Yep.
not traditionally be like actual like Bat family members, but they are very close allies.
Hmm.
Um, and we're working out like we need to figure out okay where is his base? How do we stop him? We got to try to do so he won't punish the city. And all three of them have a part to play. Gordon's, hooking up a device. Lucius is tracing the signal, and Batman is being, the fucker in a bat suit, being a distraction, basically.
But
And
yeah,
he's
we start to put this plan into action. Riddler makes his
First, I
like,
love how he leaves like, I'll keep the engine running. We have until sunset to get ready. I'll be back. Where the hell are you going shopping? Shopping. Where's the burning smell? He used your steel cutter earlier. To make what? Jim, to make what? Really? And there's just a hole in the wall in the shape of a bat.
yep. But we start to put this plan into action. We see Riddler making his daily address to his people. Sees that nobody's going to give him a riddle until Batman drives in with his newly tricked out motorcycle with the giant bat symbol on the front, and
He's
it's
almost like
great.
a bat out of hell.
Yep.
Because
And
I swear that's what Capullo must be homaging with this full page spread.
oh, probably, yeah.
Um,
But yeah, he makes his way there, and challenges Riddler.
and I love his challenge.
Mhm.
Like
For
first,
the sake, we're not gonna like read out the whole scene, but like it's because it's very long, but it's such a good scene.
again, but it continues this the idea of Gotham City being there,
Mhm.
and being at the center while Jim and Lucius are pulling their stuff together, getting
Mhm.
things to work. Um, Also, he gets some really good digs in. He knows exactly how to, attack the Riddler's vanity by calling out the fucker's cheap hat. It's like, the hat wasn't cheap, Batman. Uh, and the Riddler tries to psychoanalyze the Batman
Mhm.
and fails completely.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, well, I'm right, aren't I? Not even close. Why don't you try again? And it's the whole idea of, it's the Riddler gets it wrong.
Mhm.
And of course, being a supervillain isn't going
Oh yeah,
to.
he's not just gonna like give play fair with Batman here. Yeah, so he just sends him down like he does the others, um, and sends him down to this pit of lions. You see, unfortunately, the blood of his other of the other people that have challenged Riddler there, which is such a shame. Like, oh God, I love that, but a horrible idea, but I love it. Um,
Um,
yeah,
and
so.
we end the issue by flashing back in parallel to a Bruce Wayne, a young teenage Bruce Wayne at school in like a physics lesson, really exploring the immediate trauma of his family's death.
Mhm.
Which this is just a scene that just stood out to me, just because we don't ever really get to see that. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like he sees like all of his classmates around him dead, and it's just it's an
well,
awful image.
he's triggered by the mention of a bullet,
Yeah, yeah.
like hitting a target, and it's it's this great artistic depiction just of trauma and PTSD
Mhm.
that I think has just gotten overlooked. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's only a couple of pages, and it parallels with Bruce attacking the lions. Um, but you know, eventually um, we see it ending with Bruce saving his teacher um,
Mhm.
in the past, and the whole answer to his question is actually zero, which is great. Um, and we get, also Bruce saving Gordon in the present, while Riddler still glows.
Mhm.
Uh, but just again, just this great depiction of trauma that I think gets understated and undersold
Yeah, yeah,
through Bruce.
definitely. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we move on to Batman number 33, the penultimate issue of Zero Year. Um, let's get right into it. I love especially the title page of this for
Ooh,
Arc. Yeah, it says
yes.
Arc Zero Year Savage City. Like, oh, I love that. I mean, honestly, like all the title pages for Zero Year have been fantastic, but this one especially, I love. But we get into it. There are these Riddler bots sort of like watching over the city. Um, Lucius is the man on the inside here, as he's sort of like guiding Gordon and his men through the sewers here.
Basically to where they think the Riddler is going to be.
Mhm.
Um, Bruce is also, taking his own way, trying to take out some of the drones. There's this robot dog drone style thing, which is great. Also, just this great moment of uh, Bruce in like a tube, almost homaging Batman Forever. Um, just a little bit with that.
I don't know if it's homaging that, but I get that.
That's kind of the vibes that I got with some of the just insanity of the tube. But Bruce goes down the tube. You see his costume almost looks ripped in places.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but he is confronted by Riddler drones with the smug bastard,
yeah,
transmitting his image to them.
yeah. His image, his fucking smug face. Yeah. So he shoots the Batman, of course. Taking out the elevator shaft. Batman makes his way out of there. More Riddler drones are waiting outside to continue to shoot at him.
They
That.
attack Lucius,
Mhm.
um, but Bruce comes in time to save him. Uh, and Gordon is kind of AWOL. Immediately, they're trying to find Gordon, stop explosives because he's going to sink the whole city. That is our threat for these last two issues.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, by the way, we didn't even mention the Batman 33 cover,
oh
which
yeah,
is
with
like, oh, with a giant question mark. Like, oh, I love
it
that.
kind of reminds me a little bit of an almost inverse of the cover, like that famous Detective Comics cover where Riddler first appears.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I
Um,
get that.
like almost a dark mirror of that.
Hmm.
Um, I really liked that touch. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's like then Bruce shows Lucius this design, um, of it's like he can't figure it out, but Bruce has the answer of what this design was, of where Nigma would be off, sort of almost in like the dot part of a question mark is really the idea.
Hmm.
Um, and then we get Batman stalking through the city.
Hmm. And he makes his way over to where he first met Edward Nygma as Bruce Wayne, and in front of the giant Sphinx here in the museum. Um, he's there as Batman. He faces off. First off, this is the first time that they like that Batman and Riddler have met physically, and
As Batman and Riddler,
it's where Bruce
because
and Edward first met.
yeah, because that was still Edward Nigma,
Well, yeah, that was Edward and it was Bruce. This is Riddler and Batman.
which
Um,
is again just great use of parallelism there,
mhm.
um, as Snyder does so well.
And Riddler unveils his final trap, which seems to involve the same snake puzzle that we saw
Yes,
way back when they first met, and
which,
that
which
ends
is
our
of course a
penultimate.
board game.
That ends our penultimate issue. We go into Batman 34 with such a cool cover with the broken Riddler cane and the lions there, and
Well,
just
it's
what.
also it keeps also just keeps with the Egypt imagery because it almost looks like excuse me, the tools that a pharaoh would have.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Keeping in with this game.
Uh-huh.
Um, I and this is a game. This is a game of skill, and I like that it's coming down to a game,
Mhm.
a puzzle.
Also, one final really good look at the Detective 27 homage suit, which I am so in love with. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's honestly just a shame that it's not used beyond this one story because it's so good. But yeah, final issue. Here we go. It is of course another double length because these just are everywhere in this story, which is so weird because again we mentioned a couple times that like Snyder was co-plotting slash co-writing Batman Eternal at the same time. Like, how did he have the time to do
I
all these
imagine a
double
lot of it
double
might have been
issues?
Tinian, just because there aren't as many
Oh yeah,
backups.
yeah. Like you could see in Eternal, like you can see in Eternal, like Tinian writes a lot of the scripts, and Snyder is mostly a plotter. Um, but still, like
Yeah,
he was still a big part of that.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I mean, especially because there just aren't any back. There's only one backup for this, like these 8 issues, which
mhm.
we have to talk about. I have thoughts.
Oh, it's such a good backup. But
Yeah.
yeah, we get into this. We here we go. We have the snake puzzle here, and it's Riddler lays out the rules for it. Um, Meanwhile, outside, Lucius and Gordon have met up. Finally, after they've been separated for a while here.
Yes. The idea is that there are 12 riddles to say. The game is rigged. They both know that, and he only has uh, enough time before the city's going to basically be bombed and blow up. He has 15 minutes while Gordon and Lucius are getting their shit together and trying to save the day.
Mhm.
Um, and he gets the first riddle done, and a minute has already passed. Um, I also this is where Scott Snyder shines with actually writing out riddles. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um,
They're actually really smart riddles.
yeah, very very interesting.
Mhm.
Um, me and again paralleling it with the actual action of Gordon trying to break through and save everything. Um,
Mhm.
and Riddler kind of stalling because he's genuinely kind of scared, though he's not showing it.
Mhm.
Um, that he might make it through. Um,
Yeah.
but
And,
then there's
and that's a lot of what this issue is. It's just these great scenes of where they're laying out these riddles for Batman as Gordon and Lucius start to break through more.
yeah, and part of me just doesn't want to ruin any of the riddles because you really should go and read this because they're really
Yeah. Oh
fun
yeah.
riddles.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I would like obviously like I said with that one scene, like we're not gonna lay out the whole
Yeah,
scenes,
I
but
will lay
they are
out
really great.
that the last riddle he gets is wrong. Um,
Mhm.
uh, the riddle he's asked is, my greatest of my strengths is that I know my worth. I hug myself so tightly at every birth. Whatever could I be? Um, and says the answer is a blade, and that's wrong. Um, and what's great is that we have this whole idea that all the riddles are answers to unsolvable riddles, building up to the whole idea is that the answer to the riddle is supposed to be a knot, because this
Mhm.
is the Gordian knot, the big unsolvable riddle. And Bruce answers a blade, which, if you know the story of the Gordian knot, it was untied, technically, by Alexander the Great, who took out a sword and cut it. Like, and it's such an obvious way to conclude that it really works. Um, and you can just see as Bruce just stalks towards Nigma, and the man just gets terrified.
Yeah.
Uh,
Only leading up to this great page where he just punches him out, and it's such a great full page. He goes after him. Riddler has like this button attached to him. Um, and
and it's an electrode that's going to basically connect um, to everything, and basically is going to blow up the city unless it goes routed through the person. So Bruce attaches it to himself, and takes all that voltage,
yeah. And,
paralleled with young traumatized teenage Bruce trying to do electroconvulsive therapy, which
mhm.
uh, just does have its place in medicine even today. Not for things like that. It's generally for things like certain forms of depression, certain things. It's also, nowhere near as like scary as, people make it out to be, especially the way it's performed today.
Mm.
But here it really works to represent that trauma. Um, and like if young Bruce stopping it while older Bruce just gets shocked.
Yeah. I like these
And
two completely black pages then.
yeah,
I'm not sure if one of them is a filler page, but one of them is definitely meant to be completely black with just these little
I
bits of
don't I
dialogue
don't
there.
think it's gonna be a filler page.
Yeah. But yes, Alfred is waking him up then. Uh he gets him up then as Riddler is finally defeated. And
The city power is back. It's over. It's like I love how the only explanation we get is like Bruce is like, wait, but how? Because you're Batman. That's how.
and um and that's that. We go to 1 month
1 month
later,
later,
and we see sort of the aftermath of everything. Bruce is obviously a much more public figure now. He knows Gordon pretty casually, is clearly working pretty closely with Lucius once again.
Enigma is locked up in Arkham,
Hmm.
the first of many.
And Alfred says that there is someone waiting for Bruce, one Julie Madison. Um, and I love this scene. I love this
It's such
scene
a good
with
scene.
every fiber of my being. So Alfred says to Bruce, go out, meet with her, rekindle your connection. And Bruce says, I can't, pretty much with the reasoning behind it being that, like, I'm Batman, I can't do this, I can't be close with her. Um but uh but the scene sort of ends. Alfred goes back out to Julie, says, Julie says that Alfred, if he's busy, and Alfred goes, don't be silly, Miss Madison. He takes her out to see him, they hug, they connect again. We get this great page where we see these 6 panels. They're on a date together. They have a kid together. They go to see Zorro. They have a whole family. Bruce grows a mustache and looks like Thomas. Um, and
And older Alfred looks unhappy, and obviously,
Bruce says thank you, Alfred. Alfred says of course. And then we go back to what actually happened, which is Julie waiting for Bruce. Says, Alfred, you were saying so. Any hope? And Alfred says, what? Oh,
I'm so sorry,
I'm so
Miss.
sorry, miss, but I'm afraid he's
He's
spoken
spoken
for.
for.
And we see what would be the main New 52 Batman suit then flying through the city. And oh my god, it's so good. It's so
It's so
good.
good. You can see why this is my favorite, right? Like,
So this is officially your
I
favorite
think it's
story that we've
officially
covered.
my favorite that we've
Wow.
covered.
I mean, before we finalize that answer, let's talk about this backup story
This
here.
backup
People in
story.
the Dark. Scott Snyder and James Tinian with Andy Clark on art here. Uh, it's about a little Harper and Cullen Rowe.
Yeah, I
And
think this
they're
was this was the backup to like the first issue of this collection, I believe.
okay,
Um,
gotcha.
so we are right in Dark City. The power has just gone out.
And
Harper is like the smart, precocious one who's just like, I figured it out. We could get some power back on Dad. And their father's a bastard,
yep,
um, who's just going to grab a drink with the boys. I don't know anything about fixing a light. And just like Harper's anger is just like, it's like, I feel that to my very core. Like, you are shitty. And then you have Cullen, who is just so sad. Like, he needs comfort. He needs like a family to be brought together. But they are, people in the dark.
yeah. And as Harper sort of goes down to comfort Cullen, we see Batman, this great 2 page spread of Batman flying through, gliding through the city, and we see pretty much like a glimpse of like all the other tie-ins to this arc. We see like Green Arrow, we see John Stewart, we see a little Barbara Gordon, a young Superman, Barry Allen, um,
Is that
and
is that Red Hood supposed to be?
it is Jason. Yeah,
It is Jason.
you'd have to read the backup to get it, but yeah, it is Jason.
Okay,
Not the backup, but the tie-in.
the tie-in.
I have read all the tie-ins to it actually. Like I said, I have a complete collection of all the tie-ins to Zero Year, and most of them are pretty good actually. Big favorite, of course, is the Barbara Gordon one. I fucking love that one.
Yeah, but I love the whole monologue because it's about there are special people out there calling people who see all the fear and all the bad things, and they stand up and they do something about it. which I love it. It's just
Yeah,
this nice little note on people in general.
yeah. And after all this, Cullen feels better. It's a sweet little scene, and they say goodnight to
She
each other. And that's it.
well,
It's
yeah, she
it's
gets the
super
light on,
nice.
and then he's like, "Okay, you can turn it off," and it's the perfect bookend.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. But that was Zero Year.
That
That
was
was
Zero
Zero Year.
Year.
Yeah, so it is officially your favorite story we've covered.
It is number one.
Wow.
It
I
is.
wasn't sure if anything was going to cover Court of Owls for a top Court of Owls for such a long time. Um,
I think it's just because this one made a statement.
I mean, it is also worth noting that your top two are Scott Snyder's stories
Yes.
and the longest Scott Snyder stories we've covered. So there's
Yes.
that.
Like,
Yeah, I
I
totally get
mean,
that.
yeah, of of the top of the top five, three of them are Scott Snyder stories.
Yeah, and
Um,
I mean, it's very obvious why we've done nothing but praise all three of these stories, and I mean, hell, there's a reason. Like, looking at the stats, Court of Owls is still our most listened to episode of all time,
yes.
and for good reason. It's a great story, and yeah, it means a lot to us, of course. So let's hope this one does as well, or at least
Yes.
close.
I'd
So
also say if you've listened to this, go listen to our thoughts on the Batman. Go back because
yeah,
if
we mentioned that a
if
lot.
we
I
were
mean,
covering adapted media, I would cover the Batman here, but we've already done a full episode on that.
we have,
Um,
we have. Yeah, so go listen to that one. Go listen to our year one discussion because there's a lot of talk about that here. Also, are there Scott Snyder discussions? Those are pretty important. And also our most recent episodes because our newest Batman block has been doing really well, and I'm glad to see that. So like Death in the Family shot up into our top five most listened to of all time so quickly. It was insane. Um, so yeah, that means a lot. But yeah, it's been great fun doing these last couple episodes. I am curious, actually. I have a bit of a Twitter question of my own. Um, who is your favorite Batman villain?
um, well, that's actually really hard because there's so many good ones. Um, favorite. That's. I mean, just basing it off of the comics that I've read right now, maybe the Riddler, honestly.
Nice, nice. That's cool.
Because
I
like,
think if I were basing it off just what we've read, I mean, obviously I'm a huge Joker fan, but I would say,
yeah,
the Court of Owls and the Talons.
maybe yeah, maybe the Court too. It's a hard thing to decide because there's so many. There's every superhero has to have their own good villains.
Yeah.
My only thing with the Joker is like, I know there are things where people do not get how to write the Joker.
I mean,
Um,
thankfully, we've only covered stuff with good Joker content, mostly, aside
mostly.
aside from the back half of Death in the Family. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, Joker hasn't really been poorly characterized in most of the things we've covered, so there's that. Um, and also
Yeah.
we've covered Batman the Animated Series where Joker's at his absolute best. Um, so yeah, I was just curious because we've done a fair bit of Batman at this point. I was curious if you had a favorite, and we talked a lot about Riddler here, so I had a feeling it might be Riddler.
Yeah.
But,
That could also be recency bias because we've done, two great Riddler stories.
yeah,
But
it's true.
yeah.
All right, I guess that about covers it, doesn't it? That's pretty
Yeah.
much it.
I
You
don't
want
know what's coming.
you want to find out what the next
I need to
episode
find
is?
out what's coming.
All right.
Uh,
You said you had some guesses.
I
I'm
had a
curious what they
guess.
were.
So I'm thinking it's very probably Wonder Woman.
Your reasoning.
Because we've covered stuff from the other two members of the Trinity, and we haven't covered Wonder Woman yet.
Do you
I,
have any other guesses?
maybe here's the thing, my other guesses are possibly just like other members of the Justice League we haven't covered, like Flash, or possibly Green Arrow.
Mm.
Um, but yeah,
Well, you're on the right track. I will say that. And obviously, having covered solo books for Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, a couple team books like Teen Titans and Justice League, I want to branch out a bit more. I want to cover some more solo books of heroes that we haven't really focused in on yet. So we are indeed doing Wonder Woman next time.
okay.
I'm curious what run you think it is, because I know there are a couple pretty famous ones.
Part of me hopes it's the Perez one because I just love George Perez.
Any other guesses before I say what it is?
If it's either going to be Perez or Azarello.
Okay, I'm surprised you didn't guess Gail Simone at all, but it's
Oh
not it's
shit!
not
I forgot she has a run.
it's not Gail Simone, but I was surprised you didn't say that because I know you're really excited to read Gail Simone, but it is indeed George Perez. Well, next time we'll be
Yes.
reading Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume
Yes.
1, and as such for episode 25, we'll be doing Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume 2.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
yeah,
Ooh.
so
Sorry,
very
you just made
exciting.
me so happy. Just
Yeah,
because,
it's
goddamn, George Perez.
yeah, more George Perez.
Does he do
I'm
the art of the run too?
Yes, he does all the art,
Oh,
and he's a plotter of it. And Len Wayne does a lot of the writing too.
ooh,
So
that makes it even more
that
interesting.
yeah, that'll be the first time we're covering stuff by him.
Yeah, or at least in comic form.
Oh yeah, that's
He
true.
technically did an episode of Batman the Animated Series.
That is true. That is true.
Oh,
Same with Marv Wolfman before we did Teen Titans.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Wonder Woman by George Perez next time. That's very exciting. It's the first, I think, 14 issues in volume 1. So you got a fair bit there.
A
I'm
fair
sending
bit, a
you
fair
there's
bit.
the link to the book right now. I just sent it to you on Twitter. There we go. All right, I guess that's about it. So yeah, next time, Wonder Woman by George Perez, volume 1. This is like the trades that we're doing are the ones that are split into 6 volumes. So they're pretty easy to find. It's just called Wonder Woman by George Perez, Volume 1, 2, 3, whatever. So Wonder Woman Volume 1 will be next time. Volume 2 will be the episode after, and then something else after that.
After that,
So
so just to actually, I'll confirm that when we're off camera.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that about does it. Until next time, be sure to follow us on Twitter. I am at Jomo with 3 underscores. He is at Newt5996. I will leave that all linked down in the description. If you want to buy the books that we covered in this episode and the books that we're covering next time, I'll leave Zero Year, both the 2-volume version and the complete version down in the description, as well as Wonder Woman by George Perez Volume 1. So be sure to check those out if you don't have them already. I know Wonder Woman might be a little bit harder to get like listeners for, but I really do hope that people give Wonder Woman a chance because there are some Wonder Woman comics that I absolutely love. So yeah, very exciting stuff. I guess until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
And Jacob Licklider.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.